Okay, being 7:01, I call the Lisle Library District Board meeting for April 21st, 2021 to order. Just have to read an announcement first. The Lisle Library District recognizes Governor Pritzker's Executive Order number 2021-06, which extends Executive Order number 2020-07 as amended by Executive Order number 2020-33 and Executive Order number 2020-44. The January 8, 2021 Disaster Proclamation and the Government Emergency Administration Act number 100-06-40, which suspends certain requirements of the Open Meetings Act, allowing library trustees to participate remotely. All motions will require a roll call vote. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Thomas Duffy.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Karen Larson.
Here.
Jenny Norton.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
And Liz Westad.
Here.
All right. Next item on the agenda is opportunity for visitors to speak. Just want to kind of quickly go over some points on the public comment policy from the library. Direct all comments to the presiding officer for the benefits of the public officials. Display proper decorum and conduct at all times. There is an absolute prohibition on personal attacks on board members or others. You will be given 5 minutes for public comment. Anybody's got public comment, please keep your mask on and come up to the microphone, please. So, up here, yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You need name or anything?
Actually, yeah, if you prefer to give your name and address, it's not required, but if you want to, that's good.
My name is Greg Chalecki, and I'm a 34-year resident of Lisle. And I came primarily to...
Speak.
Okay.
The microphone, can actually the board members hear the public comment speaker too?
No.
Speak up so
Speak
the
up,
audience can
okay.
hear you and the trustees at home.
Okay, I have to learn how to yell. In any event, I'm here to comment on the new project that's being planned for the library and to at least throw in my 2 cents worth as a longtime resident of Lisle that I think you have a couple of variations of how much you're looking to spend. And my personal comment is that you've got about $6 million sitting there in cash to play with. And what you can do for $6 million is what the project ought to end up being. The idea of spending $13 million and taking out loans for the additional $8 million just seems crazy to move forward with. And I'm not sure whereabouts you are in the process of finalizing things. One of the other thoughts that I had was, I don't remember seeing anything in the mail from you folks to give me an idea of what's going on. What's the plans? What's up? What's it going to cost? I find out about it because I've had a little connection with the library in past years. I can go onto your website and look. So if I haven't received anything in the mail, I got to believe everyone else that lives here has nothing in the mail regarding this project. I recall in the school district, when they did the new school, there was a pretty nice stream of stuff coming in the mail, kind of keeping you up to date on what was going on. But that I haven't seen. And I see on your agenda tonight, there's at least way down at the bottom, something about communications, but I question whether it's too late. I don't know how far along you are on the process. My final point has to do with financing. And if you are able to build this thing, make the changes and adjustments to the building for $6 million, my last comment probably is moot. But if you're going into finance, the name PMA came up to me in one of your meetings that I saw on the agenda. PMA and Bob Lewis. If any of you aren't familiar with him, that name resonates with me from the school and the new school, the $39 million new school. Bob Lewis and PMA were the architects of the plan together, so there did not need to be a referendum on the school. In short, the voters of Lisle didn't have the opportunity because of the scene generated by PMA and Bob Lewis. And from my standpoint, PMA and Bob Lewis, they're like public enemy number one and wrong, because their scheme prevented us from having a vote. So if you're going to need bonds, I would certainly want and urge you to find somebody other than PMA to be the seller of the bonds. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If we could hold down any applause or any reaction after the speaker.
We can applaud.
Yeah.
Please,
Like
no.
the old fall.
He actually was trying to cut people off the other night. Anyway, so any other public commenters tonight?
Make sure it has a microphone.
It's a microphone just for.
The microphone is for the board members. We don't have.
So how do people make a
Yeah,
public
and we
comment?
have masks on. This is really almost impossible.
It's almost like it's a setup.
They take the microphone off or no?
It's not gonna help.
Is this the microphone right here?
It is.
Good. Okay. Hello, board. I'm Ray Soike. I've been here before. There are about 10 people here this evening. Don't know all of them. There's obviously multiple people on. And I'm going to direct, I think Greg made an excellent comment about PMA. And I'm directing this at you, Tom. Tom, you're an accountant. You're a smart guy. I voted for you because you're a smart guy. And Tom, that financial analysis for this project doesn't work. You know that. There is no money in reserves for a roof. The economic values, the new construction is way overestimated because the downtown is going to be covered by a TIF. I mean, and in addition to that, you don't even have in there's going to be change orders and stuff like that. The contract terms, any contract term says, well, we don't know what else we're going to find. They're going to be surprises. And that thing just goes up and up and up. So Tom, it's not going to be $8 million. It's going to be bigger. Then that means you're going to have to take more debt, and then you're not going to have the financial flexibility to raise taxes enough. Then you're going to have to cut staff. You're going to have to sell the property. This thing, are you going to leave? This is your last board meeting. Are you going to leave this board in a lurch? Is this your legacy, Tom? You have a good record here. Why don't, I think you should for one thing, go back to PMA and tell them to redo the analysis with correct assumptions. Tom, it doesn't work. We're a landlocked community. You know that. And do the right thing, Tom. I don't know what the political thing is, but do the right thing. The other thing is, at $6 million, where you use the reserves, and Greg pointed out, and he studies the library even more than I do. You can get a lot of this, you can get a lot of things done here. $4,000 per employee for furniture, and not all the employees are full-time. $900,000 for consultants fees, $190,000 for staff offices. Where's the computers? And here on the outside, you don't have to do anything the outside, that construction. Put up some new signage. Put a nice lighted sign. It could really spruce it up. Do something with the landscaping. Tom, you have big ticket items there, all of you. Where's the scrutiny? And because the thing is, I'm a library card holder. I like the library. I get my stuff online. I come get my books. The thing is, I'm not against spending $6 million. I'm against the raising taxes when they're clearly with some scrutiny, some real opportunities for some savings, and also turning on the lights by getting an accurate PMA analysis. I mean, we're going to find out. Your legacy could be leaving this library in a lurch. I mean, Tatiana, you don't want to have to tell people in a few years they have to be cut. Your staff reductions. You don't have to want to sell property, but look at the numbers. Dig into them. We need your help. I mean, invest in a library, but let's be smart with the money. I don't think anybody wants a blank check. Be smart with money, be diligent with the money, and first order of business is tell PMA to redo the analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
My name is Kathy Moran, 2235 Pebble Creek Drive, Lisle. And, I have to say, during this past year, this pandemic, I know it's been really, really hard on everyone. I try to be an optimist, and I try to look at the good that may have come out of it. And one of the good is that I am able to more closely follow local politics, which may not be good for everybody here, but I'm thinking that the taxpayer in all of this gets very busy. They're not able to concentrate on what's going on. So what we do at election is we elect you, and we say, we're going to put you in charge, because I don't have time to think about the library and all the things that are going on in the library. So I'm putting you in charge of that. So then I start coming to a few of these meetings because I've been asked to, and I really am upset at the things that I'm hearing. This older gentleman, Lisle resident, probably for many, many years, and he's talking about lack of communication, lack of telling the taxpayer about what's happening. And I'm starting to think, well, is there some underhanded reason that this information isn't getting out? And someone here is probably going to say, well, we sent it out, and maybe it was out somewhere at some point. Maybe it was in a tab on a website somewhere. But when there's something this large happening in our community, I would think that it would be really something that you'd look to the taxpayer and you say, okay, we want your input. We want to understand what you're thinking. Let's collaborate. Let's all come together here because you are the users. You are paying for this. Let's work together and build something great here. I just don't see that happening. And I know Ray has been here and speaks emphatically. It's almost like it's his own money, his own personal money, that's being wasted here. When you're talking about 13 million versus 6 million, then I hear Naperville doing 3 million. And I'm looking at what the heck is this? We are Lisle. We're the Arboretum Village. Do we really need all these things that I'm reading about in this proposal? So I'm here a few weeks later. I think we're still trying to move the ball a little bit forward. And I am hoping that you all sit back and really think about what it is that this library truly needs, because we don't need to tax the taxpayers more than necessary. We don't need to be paying for this, until I'm good and gone. So let's really rethink. Let's pull down deep and think about what it is that we're trying to do here, because I'm very confused and I've been trying to follow it. Thank you.
Diane Myrna, Adler. I live at 2334 Adler Court. And I also came, I've lived in Lisle many years. I have a sister that lives in Hinsdale. And when they wanted a new school, they had a referendum. When we got a new school in Lisle, we did not have a referendum. Now I'm hearing that the library wants to tax the residents, and again, without a referendum. And I don't know, maybe this gentleman gave me an insight tonight that I wasn't aware of, but I don't know what this PMA is, but if they have some way of skirting around referendums, I'm not exactly for it. I think that's something that when we're spending this kind of money, taxpayers should be allowed to make their opinion. And then if they want to build and make a better library, all for it. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay.
We do have some, we've got, looks like 3 people online, and so I will make mention that live streaming participants may provide public comment during the opportunity for visitors to speak. Those who want to comment, please click the raise hand icon, and you'll be unmuted and given a chance to speak. There'll be a 5-minute limit per comment. I do have somebody. I will unmute. I will unmute. Just a moment.
Hi, my name is Fran Bixler, and I'm at 6575 Tealwood Lane in Lisle. I'm listening to the people who are speaking, and I think that if we can maybe go back to the drawing board on this $8 million project, it does seem to be a bit costly, especially with the COVID in mind, and how many taxpayers may have lost their jobs and are really looking to that tax break that Mayor Pisak and the trustees were able to do by holding down some of our taxes. So $4,000 for per employee for furniture, that seems like a lot of money. I don't think I spent $4,000 for my own home office for $4,000 for furniture for my own home office. So I think we need to maybe reconsider some of these expenses and put them in a budget line so that way people can balance them, and also maybe see where one budget line may be a little bit heavy where it doesn't need to be, and then leverage that into something that's more worthwhile. I'm just looking at this, and it almost seems like part of the details that I received were, is it true that there's going to be less overall space after the renovation? Are we going to lose some square footage in the library, or how is that going to work out? I guess that's it.
All right, thank you.
That looks like it.
Nobody else online? Do we get it? Who on, we just double check. Is there anybody else that's watching online that wants to public comment? No, okay. Did we get any emails to the email address on the agenda? Or no?
No, but we received a lot.
I know. So I know the board did receive a lot of emails in the past week, both for and against. I would probably say it was more for than against.
About 2 to 1, yes.
But we did get a lot of
Are those
emails.
all public? Are those available?
We could probably provide a summary, but they might be foiable too. So they weren't asked to be in public comment. We're just noting that though.
So they're saying that they want this huge.
But that question answered. Is there any other public comment? One more time from out here.
Do I stand right here?
You can stand at the mic or get a little closer.
Okay.
Either one.
I'm Dawn Dickinson. I live at 4600 Yakely Avenue. I didn't really plan on saying much. I don't know a lot of details because you guys are the experts and that's why we voted you in. I just kind of like just an overview. It's just a common everyday Lisle resident. My husband, like many, have jobs. They don't get increases every year. I have a certain budget. I take care of the finances of the house. My husband can't go to his boss and say, hey, I need an extra, $2,000. So I have to, and my husband and I, we have to live within our means. So all I'm asking is You guys are the experts. You see the financial statements and everything. Just treat it as your checking account. And I'm not saying that you don't, because I don't know any of you. But all I'm asking is just like a concerned citizen, as far as everything seems to be going up, gas prices, the taxes, state taxes, employment, everything is going up. And it doesn't seem like a lot to most everyday people, but there's a lot of people that are struggling right now, and every little bit makes a difference. So even if it's only maybe $10 a month for some people, it adds up. So it may turn into like an extra 100 by the time you include electric, gas, everything. The amount that went up for the new school, you know, it adds up. And all I say is just an average person that's just making ends meet and has lived within their means. I just ask that you guys consider that with all this large amount, because it does seem pretty exorbitant. As far as the furniture price, I mean, I don't know. I say just try to find something cheap. I don't know. Haven't seen all the information. So that's really all I have to say.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
Just a request, the Lisle School Board publishes all their letters that they get.
Okay. All right.
If you could
Well,
do that,
I'll
that'd
ask
be
the
nice.
board when we get to trustee comments then. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none. Typically, it's not a question and answer, but I'll just quickly, we're going to get into a much larger discussion, but I just want to, so everybody knows, we're only talking about a $7.7 million building with, and we're going to discuss tonight whether to maybe borrow 1 million to 1.5 million, and they will be debt certificates, which will be included in the existing tax levy. We probably will have to increase taxes by the CPI, which nearly every unit of government does. I mean, you're right, the village board has been good lately. The township has been good. The library has actually cut taxes over 18% 3 years, and then we froze it this year. So, and I don't have the data in front of me, but I know, I think it's not until sometime in the 2030s when we would hit the tax levy that we were at back in 2017, which was the high water mark. So we're going to get into a much larger conversation, but I just wanted to quickly highlight a couple of things in case some people wind up leaving early. Next item on the agenda is assignments for reviewing monthly accounts payable. Vice President Bartelli and Secretary Swistak review the March billings in April. President Hummel and Trustee Sullivan will review the April billings in May. That may have to change depending. Next item on is the consent agenda. Does any trustee want anything pulled from the consent agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
Steve Larson, is there a second?
Vice President Bartelli will second.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. First one is 5A, capital improvement project discussion with CCS and Shenandoah. Concept design, budget schedule, and funding. And I will turn it over to Mark Rogers from CCS.
So good evening, everyone. I'll be brief to begin with. We're basically going to go through the concept phase reports. At the last board meeting, we were directed to, or we were asked to package a $7.7 million project cost. And what that package includes is clarification of what the project scope is, the project budget, how it breaks down, a potential project schedule, as well as looking at a summary of the funding options. So I think the first thing to do tonight is to go through, let Sheehan Nagel Hartrick go through the concept that aligns to that $7.7 million project budget. And then from there, we'll go through at a high level the budget, schedule, and finances. A lot of that information is information that has been gone through in the past, but I will give a high level overview. And if there's any questions from the board, we can have that discussion. So with that being said, Don, if you could take over the reins, that would be great.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
I'm going to start with a description of the improvements that are being made to the library as part of this project. The drawing that you see consists of the 2 floor plans for the library building. On the bottom is the lower level floor plan for orientation. This is the north side of the building facing Front Street. This is the upper floor plan, which occupies just a small portion above the lower floor plan. I'm going to start at the building entry and move through it from there. One of the things that we're doing is relocating the building entry to the center of the library, which is actually very consistent with the original design for the library. It's also common public library design so that when you walk in the front door, you have minimum travel distance to get to wherever you want to go inside the library. In order to mark that new entry location, we're proposing to put a new canopy on the outside of the building as a way of demarcating where the entry to the building is. It's a rather confusing issue at the library right now, and this will help to address that. One of the advantages of relocating the entry here is that it allows us to get a new main service desk directly inside the entry to the lobby that allows people to check out books, but it also serves a kind of security function right near the front door. So right now with the existing library entry at the end of the building where the meeting rooms are, there really is no service desk down there. So in order to maintain security, it requires additional staffing by the library to make sure that there's somebody down there. As you come further into the building, we are including 2 new family restrooms that are centrally located off of the main lobby for the building. This is something that's lacking in the current building and has become very common in public library design. To the right, as you move through the lobby and turn to the right, you enter the new youth services area. Youth services is currently located on the 2nd floor. It's very difficult to get through. To get to, if you're a parent coming with kids and strollers, you have to go up a level in order to get to it. This would be much more convenient and usable for parents and families coming to visit the library because you come in the front door and the youth services area is right on the same floor, right adjacent to the new lobby and the new entry. Youth services will include an entirely redesigned youth services area that'll include new program room and other amenities to the youth services area. One of the things that I want to point out on these drawings, the areas that you see in gray are areas, existing areas of the building that we are proposing to leave as is. So this is an effective way to control the budget for the project by reutilizing as much of the existing library building as we can, and really focusing this proposal really focuses the improvements on the public areas of the library as opposed to the back of house areas of the library. Moving to the left, as you come in off of the main lobby, we have the adult services area. This would be the fiction collection and popular collections that are located on the 1st floor. Again, very convenient for people coming to visit the library who want access to things like audiovisual collections and things like that. We're adding a new drive-up service window that I'll discuss more when we look at the exterior of the building. But this gray box here is the existing circulation department, which we are leaving where it is right now, and we have found a way to incorporate a new drive-up service window directly into the circulation department located there right now. Part of the plan also includes adding additional small group study rooms, which are a high demand space in public libraries, including the Lisle public library. There are a couple of existing study rooms that we're going to preserve, and then we're also going to add a couple of new study rooms across from it here, and also one where the existing entry into the building is at the far east end of the building located here. One of the other improvements to the new library plan is introducing a dedicated teen area. This has become very important design element in public library design as a way of keeping kids who kind of outgrow going to the library with their parent, keeping them engaged in the library so that they become lifelong library users. So there'll be a dedicated teen area here. The goal here is to give them enough privacy that it feels like it's their space, but also to keep it kind of easy to monitor and open to the public areas as well. So that's an important new feature in the library renovation. Moving up to the second floor of the building, again, the gray area that you see here, currently this is the youth services area, and these are the youth services workspaces up here, the back of house spaces for staff. We're going to reuse those except for adult services staff instead of youth services staff. So again, another way of effectively controlling the budget for the project. The upper floor then is primarily given over to the nonfiction collection. There'll be a quiet study room up here. We're also proposing to add a single-use restroom up here as well, so that you don't have to go up or down half a level of stairs in order to gain access to a toilet room as you do in the current configuration at the library. We're introducing a new public stair and a new elevator together with a new south entry, and I'll refer to this in a minute in the exterior design, but the new south entry allows us to take advantage of a lot of parking spaces that are located along the south side of the building currently. The only addition that we're putting on the existing library building is a small vestibule at the south entry piece here. Otherwise, it includes a canopy piece that's very similar to the canopy piece that we're proposing for the north entry, again, so that the entries to the library are easily visible for any visitor who comes to the library building. So the elevator then makes this entry, this south entry, which is about 4 feet lower than the existing floor elevation for the upper floor. So imagine when you come in to this entry, you're at a kind of intermediate landing. You go up 4 feet to arrive at the adult services nonfiction collection on the upper floor. Right adjacent to that is also a service desk that, again, serves a kind of security function as well as a service function for the library, being located right next to this public entry into the building. The new elevator allows people in wheelchairs and makes this a universally accessible entry, so that if you're in a wheelchair or have difficulty walking or getting up and down stairs, you can use this elevator to get from this intermediate landing up to the adult services collection on the upper floor or down to the lower level that's located here. Again, this new stair and elevator are kind of centrally located within the building. So as you move up and down in these entries in the building, you're always kind of centrally located within the building, which makes it much easier to navigate to where you want to go inside the library building. I'm going to quickly go through the floor plans, which is kind of another way of looking at the drawings that we just looked at. They provide a little more detail. And again, for reference, this is Front Street out here along the top. This is Kingston Avenue along the left-hand side. So in this drawing, north is up. This is the north parking lot that's shown here, and this is the lower level plan. So again, here you can see the amount of gray space that represents existing space in the building that will remain substantially as it is right now as a way of controlling cost. Here you can see where the new entry is located, kind of centrally in between youth services on one side and adult services on the other side. And then at the back here, this is the new elevator and stair that provide access up to the upper floor. We're trying to also increase the number of parking spaces that we have in the north parking lot. It's very limited because of the existing detention pond that's located in the northeast corner of the site, but we are proposing to extend the north parking lot to the west in order to pick up a few more parking spaces in this north lot to maximize the amount of parking near the entry into the building. As we go up to the upper floor, you can see then the south parking lot, and you know, there's a lot of parking that's available here. So by adding this new entry into the building off of the south parking lot, we are really taking it, we are really getting many more parking spaces closer to an entry to the building than it's ever had before in this scheme. Again, the gray area that you see here is the back of house staff area, which is being reused. There's an existing fire stair here that we're also leaving in place. Here is the entry in the new vestibule that you use to enter from the south parking lot. This is a landing, that kind of intermediate landing that I was referring to. There's a stairway that goes up 4 feet to get to the upper level here, or goes down about 8 feet to get down to the main lobby space on the lower floor. And then here's the new elevator that allows you to be able to access all of that if you're in a wheelchair or have other mobility issues. Going quickly now go through some of the exterior preliminary renderings. And one of the things that I want to point out, there's been a question raised about how far we are in the design process. While a lot of this looks like it's fairly developed, we are at the beginning of the design process. We are much closer to the beginning than the end. And so there is a lot of development yet to be made in this, a lot of input that we are still going to need from both staff and community in order to develop the design before we get it into its final form. This is a rendering that shows the proposed new north entry for the building. It's kind of a standalone piece that doesn't really interfere with existing construction and foundation systems on the existing building. We're proposing to put a new sloped roof on it that has some elements of the pitched roof residential design in the nearby residential neighborhood. You know, this kind of upturned piece, if you will, as a welcoming gesture, again, to really provide an easily identifiable entry into the building and also to start to change the character of the building as well. And in this image, you can also see off to the left-hand side here, this is that new drive-up service. So we're taking advantage of the existing one-way road that comes down here right now to introduce a new drive-up service window right off of the circulation department. So really right where it needs to be functionally for the library. This is an aerial view from the northwest corner of the site looking back towards, this is the north entry that you see here. And then on the flip side, this is the south entry that you see on the other side. So this is the north parking lot, which has two-way traffic here. Front Street is just off the image here to the left. Kingston Avenue is just off the image here on the right. And then this is the one-way parking lot along the south side of the building that provides access to the new south entry here. There's also a kind of clarity in terms of the organization of the building with this new plan that you can see even in the building massing, where the one-story portion, the original portion of the library, is really the youth services area right now. The two-story portion that was added in the 1980s becomes dedicated to adult services. This is an image of the south side of the project, the south entry. And again, we are intentionally trying to make the north and the south entries look similar so that they're clearly identifiable as Lisle Library District elements and where you enter the building. There's an idea here that's yet to be developed of possibly taking advantage of this very long, low wall where you come in off of Kingston Street, and is there a possibility to use that for signage or some other function on the building? And then finally, this is another aerial taken from the northeast corner of the building. Again, for reference, this is Kingston Avenue up at the top. Front Street is off to the right here. This is the north parking lot. This is the north entry here. This is the drive-up window with the one-way traffic that allows us to get a car up to the drive-up window on the right side the way that it needs to be. And then on the other side, you can see the south parking lot and the south entry. And what I'd like to do now is show you the model, the computer model, that provides a little more a little more clarity with respect to the way the design is worked out. So what you're looking at here is a site plan, and the road that you see along the top here, this is Front Street. This road off on the left-hand side is Kingston Street. This is the south parking lot, and this is the north parking lot that has two entries onto Front Street here. This piece in the center is the new proposed north entry to the building. This piece on the flip side is the new south entry piece to the building. And so this is a little animation that will just kind of flip through a few of these views and give you a sense as you move around the library how these pieces all come together. You know, it's a fairly complicated site because of the topography, and it's easy to get disoriented. So this is flipping around to look at the north side of the building. Right in the center there, you can see the new north entry. In the foreground is Front Street. And then as this shifts around, this gives you a view of what you would see if you come in off of Front Street, off of one of those existing entries off of Front Street. Again, looking back towards the new north entry, and then zooming in on the new north entry to give you a sense of what that looks like and how it integrates into the rest of the building. You can see the drive-up window over on the left-hand side there. And then as we zoom back out, here's that aerial view where you can see the north entry on the one side, the south entry on the other side. And then this will flip around to look at this from the end of the building, which I think provides a pretty clear idea of the way these two entries, the one on the north side and the one on the south side, kind of work together in the building. You can imagine coming in from either entry and landing at essentially the same spot in the building. This is the view that you would get coming in off of Kingston Street. This is one-way traffic. And again, the view looking towards the new south entry piece. As we flip around here, you'll see the south elevation. And again, the south entry piece in the center there. The existing meeting room is off to the right in this view. As we zoom in here, this is kind of a repeat of that south entry perspective that we looked at a minute ago. And as we zoom out again and flip around to the other side of the building, so here you're looking at it along the length of the building again with the south entry on the left and the north entry on the right. The white pad area that you see in the foreground there is an opportunity for an outdoor program space that could be used in conjunction with the meeting room space inside. And then the other aerial view where you're looking down on the drive-up lane and the north entry in the background, and then what that view would look like if you were in a car approaching the building from that perspective. So that's what we have as far as a presentation. You know, I can let this run again if that would be useful for everybody to see, but I'll pause here and see if there are any questions or comments.
Are there any trustee questions or comments? Treasurer Norton, I think I saw your hand.
I have several, but I'll just start with the one that is most recent to what was discussed. And then I'll let other people take a turn. I don't need to ask a bunch of questions at once, but for the east former entrance potential program space pad area in the rendering, it doesn't seem to show where there is currently overhang. Is this contemplating that goes away, or what would is it just not shown?
It's not shown because we really don't know if there's a need for it. So I think the nature of that outdoor program space is something that, I mentioned that we're early in the design process and that there are a number of things to be figured out as we move forward. And I think this is one of them. This is an important one. We need to understand better the nature of the outdoor activities that will take place there, how often they happen, who is it that's using it. And I think based on the use that space will get, we can make a better determination about whether there's value in keeping the existing overhead entry piece there or not. One of the things that we want to avoid is having a piece that, we're going to great lengths here to clarify the building entries. And one of the things we want to avoid is having a third piece on here that might be mistaken for an entry piece on here. But it could very well be, as we develop this, that there's a functional use to keep that.
I'm sorry. Is that good for now, Treasurer Norton? Or do you want to give more?
Yeah, I just wanted to cherry pick one for starters, let other people talk, and then I'm gonna try to figure out what my most important next question is.
Okay. Trustee Duffy, I think I saw your hand.
So thank you for that walkthrough. The idea of adding those additional spaces to the north side, right? Is that basically because since it's like the main entrance, you're adding additional spaces there to drive traffic to that area? Now, the reason, before you answer, sorry, maybe a little bit rhetorical there, but the other question, the reason why I asked this is we got a lot of parking lots, and I don't know. I mean, if both, and let's say in concept, both entrances are really nice, do the job of driving people into the centralized part of the library, even if you have a main entrance, I don't necessarily see a need or the cost to add additional spaces to it. We have a lot of blacktop already at this location. I think, is that why you guys kind of thought about adding that to the north side?
We have been through so many iterations of figuring out how to maximize parking near the entries to the building that I think you're right to point out that this might be an idea that was more relevant in some of the past iterations of the design than it is now. So I think, what we're interested in doing is making the library entries as convenient as possible for people. And that little north lot extension, which happens, it's the little piece that happens down at the end here. What we gain is 6 cars. Is it worth gaining that 6 cars? Not only for the additional blacktop here, but this is not a great parking area, because imagine if you turn right to find a parking space and all of these spaces happen to be filled. Now you have to kind of back out in order to get out of that. So I think it was introduced as a way of maximizing the number of parking spaces as near the front doors as we could get them. But I think you're right to point out that with the development of the south entry and taking advantage of all the parking we have on the south side, this may not be a necessary piece anymore.
Well, I'll mention something. I will admit that part of extending the north lot was due to new visitors coming to the library, and because our address is Front Street, they do come in off of Front Street and try to find a spot in the north lot. And they do that now, even though it's an employee lot. So that was the impetus to add a little bit more parking there. And we took away the option of, and this was for financial reasons, but in using the retention fund, that was just not financially feasible. So we were looking to expand the parking in a small way on the north side because of that fact.
I'll add one other thing too, just thinking about where we're at today and how much needs to be developed. before this project becomes a reality, is these types of comments are good to have now so that they're thought about at this stage. And, you know, whether the parking lot on the north side expands by those 6 spaces or not, those are things that can evolve as the project goes, and not that you have to decide that now. So I think one of the things that we didn't hit on maybe early enough in discussion, and I probably should have hit on a little bit earlier, is that keep in mind all of these pieces are really to try to get get consensus on what is important for the project. And, you know, in other words, does youth services need to be right next to an entrance and on the first floor? And in addition to making sure the spaces are roughly in the right spot, is the budget something that the board is willing to move forward with? So just keep that in mind, but keep those comments coming.
Trustee Larson.
So I have a question. When like you guys get your deliveries for UPS, FedEx, whatever, do they come to the north side? Am I correct? Like to that far end before the new next 6 parking spots are, that gray pad?
Yeah, we receive a couple of deliveries a day, and the trucks are generally of the UPS variety.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they'll come in and deliver boxes there where you see the gray kind of driveway.
Right.
And then they leave, yeah.
Okay.
Vice President Bartelli.
Okay, Don, don't shoot me. I'd like to ask, is the drive-up window, that will not be recessed into the building? It will be currently at the curbside? The reason I ask, at one time, we had two-way traffic coming up and down the hill. Now, if you come in the 2 Kingston entrances and they're full, I think that parking lot would be first choice to come into use services. Having 2 lanes, if it doesn't interfere with the drive-up window, would give you the ability to not have to back out onto front and go around to Kingston, as you mentioned earlier.
Right.
I don't know that it would interfere on the Kingston side. That seems to be wide enough there that you could have two-way traffic. We can't circle all the way around the building like we had in our initial west entry.
Right.
So I'm just asking about the drive-up window and the possibility of two-way traffic. Because as I said, we did have that before and it did work.
So I think this is really a safety issue that's related to adding the drive-up window here.
Okay.
It might be that physically there's enough road width to have 3 lanes of cars necessarily. The problem is that in order to access the drive-up window, you have to get the driver's side window right up against the building, right? Which is on the wrong side of the road. So imagine if I added another car here in between these two that was facing the other direction, because we had two-way traffic. That would mean that in order to access the drive-up window, you'd be coming down this road, you'd have to cross that lane of oncoming traffic in order to get to the drive-up window, and then cross that lane of oncoming traffic again to get back into in the direction that you want to head to get out. So I think it's really a safety and a traffic issue that results from adding the drive-up window on the north side of the building. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I just was wondering, the drive-up window is flush with the curb right now as it exists. So I've seen some drive-up windows where there's a recess, an actual pull-in, but that's not in the plan. So I understand the safety issue. Thank you.
Well, I didn't see Secretary speak there.
Thank you. Don, this is perfect that you're on this screen right here. One of the things that I just wanted to to point out to everyone when we're talking about the amount of parking spaces on this north side of the building. Currently, we have a sidewalk that wraps around the north side of the building and leads up to the current east entry. And with putting in the drive-up window here, we're going to lose that sidewalk. And so what's going to happen then is that it's not going to be easy to get to the north entrance from, say, the east parking lot or the south parking lot. They're going to have to all go to the south entrance. And so I know we were talking about, those 6 spaces at the end of this north lot, and if they're necessary or not. And I'm feeling like right now, in light of the fact that we don't have that ease of taking a sidewalk up to the other entrance or down to this entrance, I mean, from the east parking lot, that it would behoove us to have those 6 extra spaces down there. So I was just kind of looking at it from that way. I know that I have taken that sidewalk that's currently there, in the past. So I just was thinking about that as we were looking at it.
Oh, it's a good point.
Trustee Duffy.
So, Don, if you don't mind, can you go back to maybe your first image that you showed had the internal, like, first floor, the youth
Sure.
services and everything? While you're getting there, Mark, this is actually a question for you first, or I want you to check me on my statement, because I know during the public comment there was a question about space, whether we were losing square footage or not. What is this design that you have, that we are looking in front of us, a more efficient use of what space we have? And one of the priorities that I know this board has been talking about and President Hummel, maybe you can verify this for me, the last few years has been making sure that the youth services department's needs were getting met. I think that has come through from multiple different angles that we know our youth services department is all. So does this meet one of the requirements that we put on? I think is it a 60% increase in the youth services size, like, give or take? I just want to verify that. I know that's in our board packet that's posted online.
Yes, and you can, I guess, visually check that yourselves. If you look at the plan we're looking at right now, the small second floor area that is up there, not the whole area, but just the areas with the stacks and the red service desk right now, makes up the white area, essentially makes up the entirety of the youth space that currently exists today. And you can see that there's, one bank, let's call it, at least in this visual, of youth space. When you do the renovation, the additional space is approximately 60% increase, because you're also gaining, keep in mind, not only the stack space that's here, the red desk that's in the lower level, but also the area that Don's highlighting right now, which is the additional program room. So you're gaining a lot of extra space down there.
And
we're also adding a couple of family restrooms that are, easily accessible from the youth services area here.
The only way to get restrooms, I know the one comment was, can we put restrooms up on the second floor and leave the youth space where it is currently? The issue with that is you're making a too small area smaller, because you'd have to remove space from the youth services area to put the restrooms in. And to answer the overall floor plan does not decrease in size. It is going to slightly increase in size. As Don said, we've worked over the past little while to make sure that we're comfortable with the budget numbers at a high level, that we think that there is the opportunity to have vestibules at both the new north main entry as well as the new south entry. And in fact, the south entry vestibule is popped out a little bit from the buildings.
So let me just make sure that I recap that in my brain. So in essence, meeting one of the core tenets of what we wanted as a board, as we kind of went through going through this adventure here, is we get a youth services department that is comprehensive to that specific patron base, which is they have a larger space, they have the program room, they have access to family restrooms, which I know is important for mothers and nursing mothers as well. And it's all on the first floor versus what currently is on the upper floor. I'm just reiterating that so that I make sure that I'm seeing this fully.
You're correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Sullivan.
Just more of a comment on this particular diagram. Is north and the south are kind of oriented in a way that is opposite of what I would have expected, and it would make it easier for me to understand this diagram if it were oriented the same way as subsequent diagrams. So
it's an interesting, it's an interesting observation, and that's the way we actually had the first diagram, was oriented the other way. And the reason that we flipped it around was because if we flip this one around so it's oriented more similarly to the floor plans that we have, this wall along the back side of the library covers up your view of the elevator and the stair and a lot of these areas that are located along the back side of the building. We don't have that problem with the view that we have here right now, because in the foreground we have largely large open spaces. So we gave up, I think, clarity in terms of from one point of view by flipping it around, but I think we gained clarity in terms of being able to understand what's actually happening inside the building.
Since I can't compare the two, I don't know what to say, except that if I were a patron, and we heard today from patrons, they're saying we're not seeing communications pieces, I think I would have a hard time fitting this into the next couple of subsequent pages that are in the packet. But, if you're saying this is better than having it the other way, then so be it.
No, I think the observations that you're raising are legitimate observations, and I guess it was our hope that by also including the exterior perspectives, that if you looked at all of the things together, it would start to make more sense. I think getting the north and the south entry canopy pieces on this diagram, we hoped was a way of being able to relate this drawing to the other drawings as well. But I think as we move forward, that's something that we'll take another look at.
The other trustees, Treasurer Norrell.
It's not really shown in any of the schedules within the packet or what's been presented so far, but do you have anywhere, and if not handy right now, then can you show us, after the fact, the sort of before and after square footage by area, so that we can kind of see, compare and contrast what stayed level, what increased, and what decreased?
Yes, we can.
I can't tell right now if we have more meeting room square footage or same or less, something like that.
Yes, we can.
I will go next. And actually, I'm going to kind of do this in reverse order than I was planning, since we've been talking about those additional north flats. I did walk the property, I think, over the weekend or the other day, and I kind of agree with Trustee Duffy. I see what obviously Secretary Swistak is talking about though too. So, that additional cost to dig into that hill and put in those spots. I was kind of going through the information you provided at that last meeting. So is it am I correct in assuming that whole part would be almost 294,000, or is that not?
I'd have to go and dig into it. I have not done any of that.
Does that number seem high though for just doing all that work for the sick, or is that more that whole north?
It's that whole, I think that's more the whole, not just the north, but also leading into the west side, right? Because you are envisioning having to re-landscape that west side so you can actually see the front entry as well.
Yeah. Because I was starting to wonder, when I was walking the property, because I was thinking, is that maybe that whole like west side of the building, like around Kingston, would that be better for outdoor program space? Plus, it's a little bit closer to youth services, because having it on the east side, I mean, I know just not youth services possibly will be using the outdoor space, but I would assume the majority of it, they would have to walk pretty much across the whole building to get there. So I don't know if that, now you might have to sacrifice the 6 spots. So I mean, it's something the board will have to discuss probably in the future, because we don't make that type
No,
of
and
decision
it's a
tonight,
good
right?
point. Yeah, whether the outdoor space is best served on east or west, I think those locations can be found, like you said. And the challenge with the west side, keep on having to check, is the slope, right?
Correct. I mean, there's going to be grading if you
Right.
visit that. So it's not
You're right.
too bad, but I could see you got still green. I walked it. Then the other thing is, I know we're not touching some of these existing bathrooms, but are we still going to remodel the existing bathrooms? Okay, so you're at least remodeling.
Yes.
Them. And I think Don just mentioned, I know I asked it last meeting, but just to confirm, the second family bathroom is next to that one. I just see family bathroom one time, but it's that space next to it.
2 of them together, yes.
Okay, gotcha. And actually, the question on youth services expanding has been asked. Where the south entry is, when I was walking, I know there's like a sewer right there. I'm assuming like where it looks like, I'm guessing where it's going to be. Is that going to have to be moved, or how is that going to work?
I know, and Don, maybe you can tell it a bit better than I can. I know we looked at that, or your engineers have looked at where the sewers were in relation to the site as handling storm water.
It's going to be probably where the south entry is, or right in that vicinity.
So this is a civil engineering plan that shows those improvements. And so the entry that we're proposing on the south side is located right here.
Yeah.
So the structure that you're talking about, I assume, might be this one that runs more or less down the center. Does that sound right?
There was definitely like a sewer, like a main.
There might be the 10-inch line there, but those are buried. And if it is, we can take a look at it once you get into the details and whether it stays, and because we're building over grade, not going.
Maybe after the meeting we could look.
Right. Yep. You're saying that there's an actual manhole.
Yeah, there's like a manhole.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah. We can look and see.
Okay. And then, so where you're putting also the south entry, are you basically kind of using like where the windows are right now on the second floor, kind of, or is it even a little bit, a few feet to the west of that? I'm just trying to visualize specifically. I'm assuming, is it like where the windows are kind of now? Or is that still up in the air?
Looks like Don's trying to find an image, maybe.
Yeah. So So imagine this pier that you see on this side continues all the way across to the other side here. Our new entry is basically to the left of that. But I mention that pier because that's the way the windows are organized. So for example, if I zoom in here, you can see how there's a window on either side of that pier. It's the same thing on the other side of the building. So essentially on the other side, we're losing the window that's located on this side of the pier, keeping the windows that are located on the other side of the pier. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm just kind of figuring out where it was. I mean, I know it's going to be in that general vicinity, but I don't know exactly where the windows are. And I know I asked this in the past, and I'm pretty sure the answer is, want to confirm that second, or the current elevator is still going to be accessible to the public. I actually have more questions, but I'll kind of pause there on the other trustees, and I see Secretary Swiss.
Can I just address something, just something that you brought up about the outdoor programming space?
Sure.
In general, I'm saying, in general, if the outdoor programming space were on the east side, more than, it wouldn't be that patrons are traveling through the building. Generally, when we have programs, even in here in the meeting room, patrons just park and then come in to attend the program. So if we had an outdoor program, patrons would generally park and then just go to the spot. It wouldn't be like a travel, the only people traveling would generally be staff.
Okay. Secretary Swistak.
Thank you. President Hamel, you got me thinking about natural lighting when you were asking about the windows. So Don, I'm just kind of curious about with the two entrances and the vestibules, are you envisioning them being more like open to allow more natural light coming into the building?
Yes, and I'm gonna, let me flip back to the model. I think it might be easier to see there.
Okay.
So, you know, I showed the one view from the other entry coming in off of Front Street. This is the
Right.
other side coming in. And so, yes, our intent is to make this as kind of glassy and open as we can,
Okay.
so that you can see activity inside the library building.
And then the other, because this is on the north side,
This is
right?
on,
So,
that's on the north side. The south side is
so
treated
the
in a very
south side,
similar
same
way.
kind of thing?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other trustee questions? Okay. Just, and we are keeping the book drop on the north side too, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the book drop is movable.
Okay.
We need to adjust its
Okay,
location.
because I was gonna say with that, that can make that, because there's gonna be a lot of traffic now going into that north lot, both with ingress and egress, and then people coming down. I mean, they're coming down the hill now anyway, but plus you got to drive through and all that. So I just wanted to make sure, because I mean, if it is, it's fine. And then I think I had one more other question here. The so I guess I think Trustee Duffy was kind of, I'm probably going to take it a step or two further, but with that north lot though, is my only concern with that north entry, even with or without the 6 additional spaces, is I worry if, like, especially parents with young children, if they're going to obviously try to get to that north lot originally, and if that lot fills up, and I think actually Vice President Bartelli alluded to it as well, you know, I just hope we don't create an aggravation where people that are starting, they got to come in and go back out onto King, you know, come out of that north lot, go up front through Kingston and wrap back around to the south side. That's my only concern with the north entrance, because you're utilizing that north parking lot. I just don't want to create people being aggravated right away, like, I can't get parking, and you know, then they got to kind of come back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the end of the world. I grant you that, and I mean, and I know you said right now there's already, you know, once or twice a week somebody does that. That could increase exponentially now, since it's like a destination for the public for sure. That's my only reservation with this north entry still. I don't know if any other trustees, I mean, if that's not a big deal, I mean, I just wanted to put that out there. That's my only reservation.
Well, I think that's why the increase of spots was
Yeah.
Introduced. And as you mentioned, we do have that issue now where people think there's an entry and there isn't. The good thing about, I think, this is that we also have a drop off. So if there was an opportunity to drop someone off, if there was no parking, they could drop some kids off and then find parking elsewhere. And I think signage would improve situation.
And I guess, you know, over time, if that were to be a problem, I guess people would learn and just figure, well, I'm not going to bother with the north lot and start the south lot. So,
The good thing about this renovation scheme as it's evolved over the past few months is that you have an identifiable main entry for someone coming in the first time, but that regardless of whether you come in up the south or the north entry, you end up in the same location.
Sure.
Whereas if you look at other options, you might not end up in the same location, which creates the security issues and things like that. So valid point to keep on to look at that though and make sure it's studied.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think the board should look at, though, going back to, I think it was like Trustee Duffy's original question is with those 6 additional spots. Trustee Duffy?
You and me are agreeing too much tonight, President Hummel. And I thought about that, and that is a good point. But I think part of when I look at our patron, their learned behavior over the past several years and how they kind of interact with the facility is that a lot of them know to park or have learned to park in the south lot, right? Or kind of just around there. So we'll still have patrons that probably still park there. And Tatiana, you brought up what I was thinking too, is the signage needs to be on point so that people know exactly where there is additional parking, if they are new, or something to that effect. But I think if this was like a brand new facility that was being dropped in unlike this and no one had ever come here, then my concern would be more towards the north lot than the south. But I think because so many people already know to park there, they probably still in some way.
It's a fair point. I'll ask this, I know I asked this last time, and I apologize. Just to confirm, though, that east lot that we're increasing 9 spaces, that's just because we're restriping it differently, correct?
Mhm.
Arthur, I'll repeat the question. I know I asked this last month. The east additional spot is to restrict.
The 9 additional spaces are for this area down here, which currently is the entry. So there's no parking there right now.
Gotcha.
In the previous scheme, without the outdoor program space here, and it sounds like there's still a little bit of a question about exactly where that's going to get located, but without that, then we can gain 9 spaces. Depending on the size of the outdoor program space down here, we're going to gain something less than 9 spaces, which is, so what we're showing is kind of a compromise position in this rendering where you can see there's some parking spaces, but there's also room dedicated to the outdoor program space.
Secretary Swistak.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on what you were talking about before with the parking spaces by youth services. And I wanted to just point out that at the Nichols Library in downtown Naperville, it's street parking by the entrance that goes into the level where their youth services is. And then the parking lot is a community parking lot. So sometimes not even library patrons are parked there. And so, people have to drive around to find a spot to park there. And then also at the Downers Grove Library, same thing, their youth services is near the entrance that is on Curtis Street. Again, there's some street parking there, but then their parking lot is in the back behind it, which is also up a level too, upstairs. And so it's not like we would be the only library that would not have tons of parking by the youth services. But if we were comparing it to both the Nichols Library and the Downers Grove Library, we would have more parking by that level. So I just kind of wanted us to remember that too. It's not that we wouldn't have any parking here, that it would be super inconvenient. And as Trustee Duffy said too, a lot of people are used to coming in off of Kingston and then parking on the south side of the building and coming in that way too. So, I think that it would be okay, and that people would get used to it and figure out, okay, where do I want to park and how to go about it. But I don't think that's going to be a huge issue as far as that goes, especially with the entrances on both sides and the ease of getting up and down stairs by that south entrance.
Any other trustee questions or comments? Treasurer Norton, are you ready? Oh, you got a question?
Yeah, I'll venture a question in here. From the interior, there was one slide that it said, talking about meeting room space, it mentioned something about technology. So I was wondering to what extent, the concept factors in potential multi-use space, maker space, et cetera. What sort of, creative technology enhancements, yeah, updated technology in study rooms. What's going on?
So I can jump in a little bit on that one. So in terms of makerspaces, actually it's a discussion we had, and I'm going back, I think, a year and a half plus with staff a while back. And the floor plan didn't lend itself to having one dedicated room for makerspace equipment, just to live in and be used as a makerspace. The thought was makerspace type equipment could be used, maybe it's on a cart or something of that nature. And with the additional meeting space rooms that are here, it could be brought to the rooms when needed. So that way you're not locking yourself into one room with a large amount of square footage being used part-time. I think that correct?
It is, and actually, I think someone asked a question about, maybe it was you, Treasurer Norton, about the meeting rooms. The meeting rooms we're currently in are not changing in terms of square feet, but across the hallway on this diagram, there is space dedicated for more meeting rooms on the adult floor, and we could, we're trying to be as flexible as possible. So one of those spaces could be used for something as a makerspace. And as Mark mentioned, also having things on carts or able to move into a space so that a smaller group could do some crafting or whatever they chose to do in a quote unquote makerspace, 3D printing, things like that. That's how we envision using these extra study spaces.
And furthermore, on the meeting rooms, we would envision, whether it's a monitor mounted on the wall with some dongles or something like that, the typical library setup where there's some connectivity opportunities for patrons is what we'd anticipate in the smaller rooms that are being added. So you'd be getting the flexibility of the space with the maker side, and then also more technology for patrons to connect when they come in.
And the library, as you all know, budgets for technology upgrades every year. So that is built into our current and previous and future working budget. I understand that in this plan, we're also looking to upgrade some cabling throughout the building for some efficiency, as well as an intercom system that's a little less prehistoric than we have right now. So we are looking to do those upgrades as well with this renovation.
Any other questions, comments? Right. So
I keep on going through the list. Is there anything else from Don and their team?
Do you have anything else, or should I kind of throw it back to Mark here?
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
So I'm going to continue along in the pamphlet, or I'll call it the report that is in the board packet. So I'm on CCS's page 1. I believe it is page 49. It's the first page. I'm not going to rehash everything that we've talked about in terms of project scope, but I did put on the key additions list here for the North Main Entry, and that's the one that aligns to the $7.7 million project budget. Transitioning into the project budget, again, this is a budget. So these numbers we know are going to move around. What we want to do is set up the library so that you don't have an issue down the line that we're having to, it's going over budget. Really, we want to build in the flexibility with alternates, with the way we've laid this out, using the information that she and Nagel Hartrading has put together, as well as historical documentation and discussion with staff to really break out these costs. Since we went through it at the last meeting, I'm not going to go through all the costs. If there are questions, I'm here to answer them. But in general essence, we're looking at a $7.7 million project cost that we're looking for the board to approve as a budget right now. As the project proceeds through, and this transition to the next page, my page 2, the project schedule, we have about a 20-month project schedule from board approval to proceed to the consultants. The first 6+ months are going to be spent on design and refining that. And all the way through the design process, we will be tracking against that budget that we've already put together to make sure that we're on track. And if something starts to go up or down, we can then adapt as necessary to keep things in budget. The one thing I will show my screen for, if I'm able to.
Mark, while you're just That's what you guys are for too, correct?
Yes, so what we do, and it's something, independent owner's rep, monitor the budget, monitor the schedule, because once you bring a contract, well, number one, you need to bring a contractor on, right? So you need, how do you write the RFP and make sure bids are leveled and everything else across the board so that you have the technical expertise to do that. And we work with the architecture team to make sure that happens. The other part of it is, we would be, during the design, doing the cost estimating, and it's really projecting to make sure the budget is on track. During construction, what happens when a change order comes down or the line or whatever else is requested? How do you handle that? That's what we're there for, to keep this thing on budget.
Don, could you release your presentation mode so I can make Mark presenter, please?
Okay, so once I get through this, if there are any questions on budget or numbers, feel free to ask away.
Thank you.
I think we've got it covered. So hopefully I'm sharing my screen now, yes. This is the preliminary project schedule we put together. And we've talked to the architectural design team. We do know that to meet this schedule, it's going to require constant feedback from the board as well as staff to make sure we're meeting deadlines and milestones. But we wanted to put something in here so you are all aware of how you can proceed. It's an option. Hopefully everyone sees this here. Where we're at today is what I'll call right before the next design phase. So in this packet, I put it as pre-design. So in this option, in April, at some point, the concept budget, the 7.7 is what's being considered right now, and the design report presentation. So in essence, at a high level, this is the scope that we want to include. You want to put youth services on the lower level. You want to put the two main entries, north and south side. Enough information will allow the architectural team to take the next steps in design. It needs to be approved. At the same time, and we would give proposals. We have those ready to go. We can give if this is the procedure that you want to go, $7.7 million budget that the board can then consider. Now, we'd recommend that your attorneys review any proposals or contracts before they're all signed, so there'd be a little bit of gap there. So that would be one of the steps that would happen pre-design.
So that would happen between this meeting and the next meeting.
Yes, yep, good, yep. We'd send them to the library. The library would then send it to your attorneys. Once everything was approved to proceed, the first step is schematic design. You can kind of see the boxes are shaded because your board meetings are typically mid-month, so it kind of straddles between. But essentially, we planned for one board meeting that was a status update to allow for board feedback, and the next board meeting we'd want approval to proceed with the next stage of design. It's called design development. Same thing, same process repeats. A status meeting in the middle with some feedback, and then you ask for another procedure or approval to proceed to the next one. And it continues on through construction documents. What this does, it allows us multiple opportunities to review the progress against the budget to make sure that we're still tracking on budget. Also allows for community engagement as well as board and staff feedback. So that's essentially what the first six and a quarter months would be from when you were to approve a consultant to move forward. We'd also want to make sure that we have time in there for the land surveyors, technical things that are smaller dollar values that you need to have, and you need to give information to the design team to complete. You have geotech, soils testing, things like that. Concurrent with design, you don't need to decide on it now, but at this point in time, once a project budget is approved, we'd start looking at what are the funding options. If a $7.7 million project budget is approved, we know that there would be some level of borrowing, in terms of a debt certificate, like you said before. How much is really up to the board and can be thought through over the next couple of months until that decision needs to be made. And then you get funding. Ideally, we want to get that funding in place before we release a bid package for contractors to bid on. You want to know that here's the dollar amounts that you have and everything else in the bank. And so that's why I have it going concurrently.
Can I just interject?
Mm-hmm.
I understand the funding can happen a couple of months down the line, or the procedures for that, but I think the board needs to understand, at least by next month, an idea of the funding so that for the staff to prepare the working budget in terms of the corporate fund and how much transference we would need to know, or at least have an idea.
No, it's a good point, because there's also steps that need to be taken ahead of getting any funding. You know, there's ordinances that have to be written and approved by the board. We need that time to do it, to write the information so that then coincides with the budget that you have to do.
We'll talk about that with Tyler.
Yep. We also have permitting. We want to do a zoning check. We have some conversations with village staff to just make sure that everything, all the processes are in there. You can see I've allocated some time in the schedule that if a zoning process did need to take place, that there's time for that before we have to go in for a building permit. So we have some, I'll call it float, the technical term, within the schedule to do so. And then we look at starting contractor procurement with any pre-qualifications and bidding. Ideally, you bid the project. You'd go out to bid and have bids due by the end of the year, avoiding Christmas holiday because subs and everyone else take holidays. So you might get less participation, but we can work through the design process to say, okay, can we get early? Do we wait a little bit later and then figure out the right timing for that? Make sure you get most competitive bids available to you. And then from there, you have a construction phase. And right now, based on what we know, we would build the renovation is foreseen as a two-phase renovation project. One phase would be the west side of the building, and I do believe, I'll bounce back to that, but keep in mind the first phase would include the new entrances and the site work. That's the west side of the building. So if you're looking at it, it's just the lower level, basically from the new entrances to the west. I'll show that in the plan in a moment. The second phase would essentially cover the two-story section of the building and the meeting room section. And the reason why we're showing it that way is that it would allow, and talking to Director Weinstein, it would allow staff to still maintain occupancy of the building and operate the library as much as possible out of the building. It would, there would be staff disturbances. It's a challenge for staff, but I think talking to Director Weinstein, she felt it was something that could be accomplished because the other side of that coin, the other options available are trying to get it all done at once, which would mean either you're closing the library or you're relocating to another location. And looking around at the budget and trying to keep things within a tight package, if you're paying rent for someone and you're paying movers to move across, streets or whatever it might be, occupy space and then pay them to move back, it adds cost to the budget. And this was a more economical way to do it. But right now, at a high level, we're thinking it might take somewhere in the range of 10 months to complete to substantial completion. Then you have maybe 1 month of move in and clean up and punch listing work to get it complete. So in essence, we'd be working towards an early 2023 completion. And just to clarify, so everyone sees it on their screen, in terms of the phasing, this is a good spot to show. So phase 1 theoretically would consist of all of this area that says roof below. That's the west side, plus this new entrance in the south. So you'd maintain stacks in operation of the second floor here and the first floor below. You might utilize this meeting room that we're currently in for staff offices. They locate in here.
Or collections.
Or collections, exactly. And that would be during phase 1. Phase 2, staff would and collections that are available would occupy the roof below area, and this upper floor, the lower floor on the meeting room would be completed. So this wall, this black line delineates phase 1 versus phase 2. I'll pause there to ask if there's any questions on schedule. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you. Any questions there?
Any trustee questions so far for Mark? Maybe just that you're finishing, we can talk about finance.
Yeah, that's where I'm going next.
Okay,
Yep. So good segue. Project funding. That's the next section here. Again, PMA did come up with 2 options for project funding. One option shows a $1 million debt certificate where the balance of funds come from existing library reserves. And option B shows 1.5 million with the balance coming from library reserves. Really the difference is, and you can see it on PMA's cover page, that's the same page from the March 24th board meeting, I believe, is, what level the library corporate fund, special reserve funds hit during the debt cycle. So it's really a decision that the board can make, I'd say, in the next, like 1 to 2 months. Probably decision on the next month to help out with budgeting. But it's not something that needs to be decided today. In essence, I just want to be clear that the 7.7 would require some borrowing, but you have the flexibility to decide what you want. How did you have a question?
No, I was going to say, I'm pretty adamant about it. It should be only $1 million of borrowing because we have the money in reserves. I don't know why you keep the money in reserves and get such little return on investments. At $500,000, you're going to get hardly anything. I'd rather just take it and put it there. We still are safe with the amount of corporate reserves we're going to have. And if you look, it's a $32,000 difference roughly between borrowing $1 million to $1.5 million, and that will create, I think, a bigger budget crunch for us because that's a fixed cost. You can't. It's a fixed cost, so you got to have to fund that $32,000 additional $32,000 every year. Like I said, with the $500,000, even if you just put it in reserves, with the investment income or the interest income specifically, I mean, it's going to be a negative cash flow with investing at $500,000. So I'm pretty adamant that this should only be borrowed at $1 million. At the end of the day, too, if you look when the debt is expired, even in 20 years, you're actually going to have more in corporate reserve credits 20 years down the road than you would at the $1.5 million. And even the low point with the corporate fund is only about a 3% difference. The only thing is it is a few years earlier that you hit your low point, but it's only a 3% difference. So I mean, I'm pretty adamant because I mean, plus if you keep that $500,000 in there, I think it would almost increase the likelihood that you would have the deficit spent. And so you're going to chip away at that $500,000 eventually anyway. So, I would, I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty hard on that. It should be only $1 million that we finance. Because right now currently we're putting in $300,000 a year in special reserves, sometimes more in a year, but we're always consistently doing $300,000. Even the years where we cut taxes. So if you got $63,000 of that is essentially going to debt, you will lose a little bit of investment income with the lower reserves, but then you're still going to have money to put in the special reserves, plus with the CPI increases that we'll probably be doing going forward. So, and I mean, I know it was probably back in the napkin type calculation, but I remember when PMA was first here in November of 2019. I think even they reused again a few months ago when they came back. I remember that first meeting back in November of 2019. They were saying, you could borrow up to $3 million because it's only $200,000, a little over $200,000 a year, and you won't have to raise taxes. So, now that it's only $1 million of borrowing, I think we could be able to fund that and not have any catastrophe. And the other thing, and I'll wrap it up quick, the library itself, the way we're funded, it's basically property taxes. We're not like the village where it has multiple sources, and I think like property taxes are roughly 25% of the revenue. In the park district, this is like a 60% of the revenue is, property taxes, and 40% are user fees. We have a pretty fixed, steady stream of revenue, which is property taxes. And we really have not had a problem ever collecting property taxes, whether it was the foreclosure crisis of the late 2000s or even this past year with COVID. In fact, I don't even think that many people in the grand scheme of things took advantage of the counties letting you delay your installment payment like a few months. So, I mean, we've survived or governments in general have survived 2 catastrophes with the foreclosure crisis and the COVID crisis of still being able to collect their property taxes. So, if we had like another stream of revenue that we were relying on, whether it's sales tax, I could see where you want to maybe make sure you got enough in reserves, but that we have that steady of a stream. That's why I think not that we're really going to deplete reserves by any stretch of the imagination, but you could give a little bit more than even the 50% we've been accustomed to. So I know it's kind of a long-winded sales pitch, but I really think we should just only borrow $1 million, and I don't know what the other trustees feel on that. But always got to.
I have a couple of questions.
All right.
I'm looking at the chart, and I don't know, Mark, if this is something you can answer or not. I'm looking at the line that's third from the bottom, where it says special reserve fund balance at time of contribution. Which contribution are they talking about?
They're talking about when the funds that are in the special reserve are used for the project. So in other words, the contribution they are referencing here is contribution to the project. So that's the amount that would be left in there from that point to start growing.
And actually, that's another point. I mean, you're only talking about less than $3,000 difference. So I mean, it's about the same amount of money. That's so let's say, I don't want to put a date on it, but when this project starts, after we transfer special reserves to pay, that's what our balance will be down. So I know it's well over 3 million now. So it's either going to be 97,000 or 100,000. So
Okay, Mark, can I go back to you? Can you explain it to me, please? I didn't understand what Tom was saying.
The way it's looked at is the third line from the bottom that says S or F or special reserve fund balance at time of contribution is the amount of money left in the special reserve fund after funds are used to pay for the project. So let's call that year one. And then over the next 20 years, if the debt certificate is a 20-year debt certificate, from that number, it would gradually increase again until the debt expiration date, which is at that point you have what this projection is showing is over $400,000 left in there to pay for what might need to be paid for 20 years from down the line.
Okay, so that's in 2041.
I don't have I'm sorry, I did not print out the final page. I only printed out the first couple pages of each one, but yes, it'd be 20 years from the project date.
Okay, so for argument's sake, make it easy, we'll call it 2041. 20 years from now.
Right.
Okay, and then on the footnotes, it says footnotes 1. I would have expected that footnote to say maybe higher than what is shown here, rather than maybe lower than what is shown here.
Let's see if I have that same footnote in my packet. I want to make sure I have the right one to address that question.
What page are you on, Liz?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, let's see, can I show it to you? I can't see a page number.
It's page 63. Page 63 in the packet.
Oh, okay.
So, all right, the only footnote that's on that page, I got it. So I think what they're trying to reference is they are not projecting that you're paying for any projects directly out of special reserve in the projection that shows the increase is from, at least in option 1A, from 97,000 to 434,000. In other words, if you do end up paying for something out of special reserves during that time period, you wouldn't be hitting 434 based on this money because something less than that.
Right, it's just saying that if with the funding that it projects you're able to fund each of the 20 years, this is what that balance would be projected to end at, assuming no withdrawals during that time.
You got it.
But I would add, we're also taking care of 10 years worth of projects on this too. So
yes,
there shouldn't be any material. I mean, you might have a little bit of spending out of it, perhaps. We spend out of the corporate fund for the smaller stuff anyhow.
Yes.
We don't take out of special reserve, but there shouldn't be
capital projects
correct,
or emergency.
Correct. So we shouldn't really have any
The library will close in 15 minutes. If
big
you wish to apply
expenses coming out of
for
special
your
reserve
library card, please
for
do
10
so
years,
now.
for the first 10 years.
So technically, I would rewrite it to say actual fund balance at this time might be lower if other capital expenditures are made from the SRF.
Yes, that's a good one.
I mean, that's, and it says what it's meant to say.
And the one, I guess, is I just came to the top of my head, I meant to bring this up too. I just want to jump in quick is, you know, there's always, we don't want to budget for it, but I think we've always talked about from time to time about outside funding. I know there could be a big federal infrastructure plan coming, whether there's going to be money available out of that, I don't know. You know, and there's other, I know even something as small as maybe paver bricks, I know was brought up in the past by, I think it was Secretary Swistak. And even if we do, if we are going to plant new trees for landscaping, I don't like the park district, a lot of places people could buy, maybe we can have people, you know, at least absorb some of the cost of that, but it's possible about buying a tree, like if a dedication perhaps. But those are smaller ticket items, but I mean, and there are some grant opportunities. I mean, again, you don't, go ahead.
That's okay, I didn't know if I.
Okay, jump.
To your point, there are grants out there. Now, you need to apply for, there's 2 library grants that are in existence right now through the state of Illinois. I will be honest, in one, we've called, and I'm sure Don and Eric can testify to the same. The Construction Act grant has not been funded since fiscal year 2013 by the Illinois State Assembly. So we've even called to see if there's any funds on that coming up. And obviously, until the state legislators fund that grant, there's no monies. And there have been people that are library districts that have gotten on the list for that grant and are still waiting, you know, for now 7, 8 years beyond and haven't seen a dime from it. So, you know, we could look at that grant opportunity. The other one that has been active, and in fact, the Villa Park Public Library project that CCS was on, did get a Live and Learn grant. We worked with that library district and the architect during the design process to apply for one of the grants. That grant cycle, I believe this fiscal year was the grant applications were due in January, and typically a decision is made on that grant application sometime mid-year. I think historically April, May, something like that. They're not huge dollar values. You know, some of them might be talking tens of thousands, of maybe 100,000 at the high end. That's something that we could look at applying for. Again, we don't know every year if it's going to be funded, but there's been more activity in those. So we could look at those opportunities to do it. What we would recommend is you don't budget for that in here, but you would go after those so that if you're able to get those, it reduces the burden on the district.
If we prepay any of this debt, we save interest by prepaying any type of debt?
I don't know that I want to speak to that on the record, not being 100% sure. So I think it's a question that we could ask the financial advisors. But I don't know. I know that there are opportunities to refinance and lower or change the terms. So I don't know at what point or when. That's all, I'll be honest and say, out of my wheelhouse. Would want the experts to speak on that.
Okay, and the way we're going to pay for this, and I'm trying to understand this chart, maybe it would be better if we had another, I don't know, special meeting to talk about finances or something, but is the anticipation that we pay money towards the project first out of the corporate fund until we hit a certain amount that's left in the corporate fund, and then special fund kicks in? Or do we transfer from the corporate fund to the special fund? I'm not sure how this is working.
We would work with your financial advisor to do that. What we've seen typically done is for auditing purposes to make things very clear and clean. You would not pay out of multiple funds to fund the project. You would put it into the special reserves as a transfer from corporate to special reserve, and then pay everything out of special reserve. So in other words, even the debt certificate proceeds that the library district would get would go into that special reserve fund and all be paid out of there. And it's really, you need to make sure that your auditable track is clean and simple to understand.
So if what I'm understanding right, in column 1, that's option 1A, if we borrow $1 million, we'll have no excess in our corporate fund, and our special reserve fund, when we start payments, will have less than $100,000.
You will still have surplus in corporate.
Yes, you would. So the amount of corporate fund surplus, I'm just looking at option 1A, and this is the
Right.
one sixth line down, where it says 48.3%. You see that
Okay.
line? That is,
Yeah.
that is the corporate fund balance as a percentage of the annual expenditures.
And it's at least it's over $1.8 million still.
Oh,
So
yes.
put in a dollar amount. I mean, it's still a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
And we could also ask the financial advisors, but I do believe that the accounting and the board, only you might know better than me even, because of the way the accounting works, you actually have additional cash funds because it's paid in arrears,
Yeah,
right?
as far as like the tax,
Right.
like the tax receipts go, yeah. And I think these numbers, if I recall from a prior conversation, I think these are at the low point of
Yes.
the fiscal year. So it will be higher at certain points of the year, maybe the majority of the year, but at the absolute low point, which I would assume would probably be late May.
Yes.
So that's at your bare bottom, you'll be at that point of 48.3. That's a start.
Yes.
And like I said, even at the 37.3%, which is the absolute low point, which is like a 2031, it's still over $1.6 million. So I mean, the percentage might seem low, but there's still some money there. You got to go. I don't want to jinx it, you're right. but I mean, there's still money in there. So I mean, we're okay. And remember, that's just a corporate fund too. I mean,
Right. And at that
Yeah.
time, there'll be less than 100,000 in special reserve.
Yeah, but remember, that's because we're spending all that money. We're spending $7 million or $7.7 million total on the building. So it's going to be low. That's what it's there for. But it's 100,000. It's a $2,700 difference at 1.5. So 1.5 is not going to keep the special reserve fund, flush. I mean, it's the same amount of money at the end of the day.
Yeah, and as I believe PMA, as they spoke of in a public meeting, that these numbers are not to the dollar amount numbers, they're projections. So, whether it's 97,424, 97,000 or 99,000, we don't know. It's just it's modeling out based on projections.
Right. I just want to make sure that when we're asked to vote, I understand all these numbers cold. I just want to make sure that as we go through this, I know that 75% or approximately 75% of our monthlies are salaries. So that is relatively predictable, relatively flat. So I just want to make sure that there's not going to come a time when things like the databases, which are $120,000 or whatever they are, they're not going to come due. They're paid once a year at a time where we're going to end up being significantly low. And so my question is, do we really need a monthly cash flow? And I know you're going to say no. I guess I'm just so afraid of running out of money some month, being short on money.
I think that, if you're trying to determine between a $1 million or $1.5 million, and it makes sense to pull historical cash flow over the past 12 months when you're trying to make that decision over the next month or so, that can be done and looked at, right? Because we know that this is an annual cash flow that projected out 20 years. And I wouldn't do that for 20 years.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too, bottom line is we're not going to run out of money again. I mean, you're going to have at least $1.8 million, over 1.8 to start. Your low point will still be a little bit over 1.6. So even in an absolute worst case scenario, if you got to dip a little bit into that, would it be $100,000 at the absolute most? And you will replenish it. I would have no worries about running out of.
So is that percentage an annual low point percentage?
That's the lowest point, so it means.
One time.
One time, yeah.
So,
So is
yeah,
it one times over 20 years or is it one time over every year is my question.
no,
It's in 2030, 2031, and then it starts bumping back up. If I'm not mistaken.
In 5 minutes.
correct. So the low point in any given year is,
Please be sure to check out all materials before leaving the building.
okay, so the low point in any given year is the percentage. So as Tom said, 37.3 for option 1A is the projected low point in option 1A. And that would occur in year 2030, 2031. So everything ahead or prior to them would be a higher percentage in the corporate fund. Anything after that year goes up.
Gotcha.
And
That
also
answers my question. Thank you.
Yep.
So just really quick, unless somebody else got a detailed question, I know we don't have to make a final decision tonight, but is everybody leaning towards $1 million in borrowing? Thumbs up, thumbs down, any comments? Vice President Bartelli?
You're asking the $1 million?
I mean, prefer 1 million. I mean, we're not asking for a final decision, but more for staff, also for budgeting purposes, more than anything for right now. But I mean, just to give probably everybody put it in their head, are we good with 1 million borrowing and not 1.5?
I would prefer the 1 million.
Okay. Every thumbs
One
up,
more.
Thumbs up.
thumbs up, thumbs up 3. No, thumbs up. Okay, couldn't see your thumbs, Secretary Swiss. That was camouflaged in the wall. And Treasurer Norton, 1 million.
I just want to say, this is kind of like choosing between green beans and Brussels sprouts. I don't really want to say I have a preference of the two, but if that's all that's on the table, then the 1 million is preferable.
All right, any questions or comments on that? If not, actually, let me ask a question. This might be a comment for maybe get ahead of myself. I mean, we could, if we wanted to, we change from PMA if the board. I'm just throwing it out there. Could they do it? I'm not going to ask yes or no right now, but is it? We could change if we wanted to, for the board to change.
We'd have to look at the documentation that is in place from the award selection. You'd have to look at the options to see. And at the top of my head, I do not know if it's something that can be easily done or if it's, I won't say the board can't, and I won't say the board can right now, but doing a little bit more research. Yep. But we can look at.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I just throwing it out there. I don't know if the board's got an answer to take. I was just throwing it out.
I know that they've done, the award was predicated on this scope of work, and they've done the diligence here. So there'd be a financial issue, I think, would be one of the biggest issues.
Do you have any else?
The last thing I'll close with, and I think it's somewhat evident, so don't dwell on it too much and take your time. I know you have your other agendas to get to, is next steps. At this point, we're really just looking for to keep the consultant team moving. Two things would need to happen. One would be approval on a project budget and the concept. And again, keep in mind it's the concept, so you'll have opportunity to allow that to evolve for your input. The other part of it would be to approve consultants to proceed, which we'd be looking to do and get you guys packages if that's what you are requesting of us to do. And you don't have to vote on that. It's just, I think there needs to be at least an acknowledgement from the library saying, hey, yes, please at least submit proposals for consideration.
Well, are you interested in seeing the contracts, basically?
Yeah, I think we've got to see the contracts. That might be something somebody might want to add.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously, like you said, the legal team. And the one question I'll ask, just in case it ever comes to,
The library is now closed. Good night.
is if there were an opportunity, like would there be an opportunity the board to pivot? Let's just say, and I'm not saying the board's going to be in favor of this, even if this opportunity were to develop, But if something were to happen, like where something popped again for downtown, like there was a golden opportunity, it would be almost too hard to pass up. Until there's a shovel in the ground, literally, is there an opportunity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, I'm not putting,
The risk would be, in any of these contracts, it'd be, and we would advise that there'd be understanding of, okay, and keep in mind, if you look at that schedule, there were 3 distinct phases of design. You had schematic, design development, and CD. There will be a fee associated with those. There'll be an overall lump sum fee for the time commitment to do the project. And keep in mind, these are not just a percentage of a project. These are built up on time commitment and resources it takes to get something done. So there'll be a fee commitment for each of those phases, and that would be the financial risk. So until you approve going to the next phase of the project, your risk is limited to the phase that you're currently in.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments for trustees on this whole topic? If not, we can move on to the next agenda item. Good? Okay.
Unless you needed anything more from us, I think I would say CCS and Shandigal Hartree Architecture would probably be in a holding pattern at this point until further direction there. So really do appreciate all of the opportunity and listening and patience from all the board members. I know this is a long path even to get to here. Usually this is the hardest part because you're trying to determine what you can spend and what you can't afford. And from here, there's a lot of decisions to be made, but hopefully the excitement starts amping up once we get through this hump, as we'll call it. So thank you for your time and thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is communication plan. I'm going to turn it over to Director Weinstein. For this review. Okay.
So we've had this on our agenda before. I believe it was named the same thing back in October. And that's when we discussed whether you want to call it community awareness, community engagement, or communication. I believe it's all kind of part of the same package of how we reach out to the community and let them know what we're doing. And we talked very briefly about that back in October, different ways to do that. But until we have a basic plan or concept, it's difficult to let the people, let the community know exactly what we're talking about. But I think we're at a point where we're talking about all of the additional ads that would come with this particular design, the drive-up window, youth services being right-sized, all of those things that were listed in the board packet. But I think now we want to discuss how to reach out to the community. We had someone here, unfortunately, all of the public commenters except for one are gone, so I'm sad to see that. I hope they can watch this later because one of the people who provided public comments talked about mailers or things like of that nature. And we haven't done that yet because we haven't had a concrete plan yet. So this is the opportunity to discuss it. And Vice President Bartelli emailed me a flyer, and that's an example in your packet. And I think they do a really good job of communicating their renovation. And so, again, now is the opportunity to discuss what the board would like to do in terms of reaching out to the residents.
Any trustee comment or question on that to start, Vice President Bartelli?
Referring to the Villa Park flyer or bulletin, I think we may be in a position to do the general. Of course, it wouldn't mirror theirs, but it could advise. I especially like the bottom part where it has to do with estimated cost to property owners for the capital improvement. That's doable, correct, Director Weinstein? I mean, that's a that seems to be one of the biggest considerations from our patrons, at least those that have spoken, how it affects our tax bill. We do know the short list that CCS and Mark has prepared about, I don't know the page number right now, but what we're addressing and what we get in our proposed design plan. If you think it's too early to even list those, Director Weinstein, you know, we can talk about that. But I do think we have enough preliminary information to put something like this out. And I think it's extremely important. It's obvious from the comments tonight that some people feel there has been no communication, which is not true. It's been on our website. We do have, you know, information out there, but this, I feel strongly about this, that we need to get moving on this. So, thank you.
Other trustee comments or questions? We got a whole bunch of hands. I think Secretary Swistak got up there first.
Thank you. Before I talk, I just want to say, I know my webcam is going wonky. If I'm going away from your screen and then popping back in, it still says that I'm here, but then it says that it's trying to connect. So just, I don't know why it's doing that. But just, I'm aware, I see it on my end, and I'm assuming you guys see it on your end, that I like blip away and then I come back. And so anyway, sorry, but I can still hear everything. I don't know. The other thing I wanted to say was I appreciate that Vice President Bartelli shared this. I think it is, you know, as she said, I mirror what, you know, her opinion, that it really is, you know, a good example for getting information out to the community. And I really feel like we're at the point right now where we should be doing this as well. So, you know, there's clear differences, you know, because of the fact that, you know, they're talking about what if the building project passes versus the building project fails. And that's, those words wouldn't be accurate for us, but just like, you know, it'd be more like if we complete this versus if we weren't to complete this, what, you know, what it would look like. So, but I, you know, I like that we're looking at something like this to get information out to our community members.
Trustee Sullivan.
One thing that, first of all, I agree totally with Trustee Bartelli and Trustee Swistak. One thing that bothers me is that people are spreading misinformation. And I think we heard that in some of the speakers today. I think we've seen that in some of the emails and the social media Facebook posts. And me, the reason, you know, there's this vacuum of information, and we have one or two people who are spreading the misinformation. And the way to cure that is to come out with sheets like this that would clear up misinformation. And, you know, if somebody were to say, you know, something that's inaccurate, if we had sheets like this, it's like we would all be, I guess the phrase is singing off the same, what do you call it? Singing off the same sheet or whatever. I think this would solve a lot of problems with misinformation. So I'm,
Ms. Sullivan, I'm still here. If you want to be specific,
Right.
and that accusation
Oh,
of public,
right.
I'm sorry. That is uncalled.
I got to use my pamphlet in my last meeting. Trustee Sullivan, or did you try to finish up?
right. I'm done.
Okay. Treasurer Norton.
I just want to say, echoing what's been said, that I agree that we definitely need the communication plan, and we need to act on that plan very quickly. It's apparent that, you know, whether it's, you know, inaccurate information or just lack of information, it seems like the public is not as aware as we would want them to be. I mean, you know, we don't know how many people watch, you know, the meetings after the fact, so we don't know how much they're hearing from us directly. Although I will say I was really pleased that after my most recent request for feedback, it seems like perhaps that is part of why we got so much feedback since the last meeting. I don't want to take credit for it, but I'm just saying I'm hopeful that people are becoming more aware and that people are speaking up and that we have a positive cycle now of feedback. And so as it goes back to the communication plan, I really think it needs to continue to be a two-way street. And so we're focusing now on what we need to send to make this information available to the masses, more than just having it on our website, more than just talking about it at meetings, et cetera. I think we need to also still really encourage feedback to us. I would propose, and I don't expect everyone to agree with me, but I would like whatever material goes out to have our group board email address right on there to say, send us your comments directly, because it's not just us telling them, we want them to tell us as well through this process. It's supposed to be iterative, two-way feedback. So I really think we need to step that up.
And I'll kind of jump in and piggyback, I think what Treasurer Norton was saying, I'll maybe take it a step further, is, I don't know if we're at that point now or we want to wait for the next phase, but this might be should we look for some type of community feedback as far as the design of the building goes? Because the last thing I want to do is spend this money and this, and have this building design and it goes vetted, if you will. And the whole community is never going to agree, but I want to have a decent enough sample size too. So at least, the people that are for renovation, especially, like they're good with the design. I just don't want like 70% of them saying, no, I don't like the design of this building. Because then it's like, well, then we gotta take that into consideration. It's like that I hate to go back to the drawing board, because we want something that the community is going to like at the end of the day, because that's my one thing. I want to make sure the community, we get the feedback that they like the design of the building. So the last thing I want, like I said, is for a design that they're going to not like, and another board might have an issue. Because one of the things we are doing as part of that last renovation in 2007 is a fraction of the cost was to close the north entrance. And although I think we're moving it over to a different part of the building, now we're going to spend more money to open, create another north entrance. But at the end of the day, you had a north entrance to start it, But I don't want to be in that spot where a future board has got to correct the mistake we made, at least by the public's.
It's a 6-month process.
Well, I understand. And I don't know if it's right now is the best time or.
Well, I think a layered process.
Sure,
not just
absolutely.
one, not just a one.
Yep.
So communicating, I think, is a ongoing affair.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, go ahead.
Do you want me to?
Jump in.
Yeah, what we've typically seen in design processes, right, is you're never going to get community all to say, like, this aesthetic or that aesthetic, as you mentioned. And what you want to do is make sure they have ample opportunity for feedback. And, in terms of this communication plan, I think that, assuming it will happen here based on discussion, that is one part of it. And then really, there might be opportunities for more direct feedback from groups at whether it's a board meeting or similar to what was done in January, more of those. But the timing really is after you have a project budget, because otherwise you're going to get feedback and something might cost 20 million and something might cost $2, right? And no one's going to have that sense. But once we start honing in, okay, here's a project budget, here's the scope. Now we have a sandbox to play in. Now we can really allow for a little bit more interactive feedback.
And so this is really the perfect time to talk about a communications plan, because we're kind of at that point with the 7.7. So I think, as Mark mentioned, we did engage 2 key groups in our community. We spoke with the Lisle Friends, the Foundation, and also spoke with the Lisle Women's Club. And there was a lot of positive support for library renovation. Yet at that time, we did not have a budget. We do now, so we could re-engage those groups. We can even extend out to other intergovernmental leaders, whether they are trustees or staff or both. So that's something that the trustees are interested in. I have very good relationships with the other intergovernmental bodies, and as well as some of the other elected officials. So we could engage those people, other groups as well as reaching out to the general populace. I think that's very key via mailings and other ways of engagement.
Trustee Duffy.
So, what I would recommend for the next meeting is a draft communications plan specific to this effort. And because I look at it as there are two big parts here, which is one, you have to create awareness, you have to provide informative facts, and then you have to create engagement in the community. So to Treasurer Norton's comment about getting feedback. But we cannot just passively try to get engagement. And that is to your comment, President Hummel, about, and I know we've talked about this with the architectural firm, about once there's better renderings of something, having better feedback from them too. But it also has to be multi-channeled. So the speaker, the public commenter about lack of mail, and I think the comment was more derived just because we haven't reached that point yet, but his comment is so well taken in that you need to do mail, you need to do web pages, you need to do online videos, you need to give a flyer to every single time someone takes a book from the library. It requires a 100% effort of informing and engaging the community. It cannot be a web page in the meetings. Because yes, and Vice President Bartelli is correct. Technically, we have been talking about this for 2 years, and we have all the stuff posted. We've had a web page, and I know on our, I forgot the name of it, but our bi-monthly document that is sent to all library district residents, we've had comments in there, and we've provided updates. So, but that's not to say that it's because it clearly has not been effective or sticky. So that would be my recommendation is honestly, and it kind of falls to you, Tatiana, is to sit down, turn the phone off, and lock the door and just write it out, because I think it's going to require a whole project plan in of itself to do it right. But if you do it right, you will have an informed community, you will have the engagement that you want, and then you will have the library renovation that the community wants represented. So I think that would be kind of my recommendation.
Thank you. Any other trustee comments or questions on this?
Yeah, I think what everybody has said, I think the more information we get out to the patrons and the residents and the village about what's going on, what we're doing, like Tom Duffy was saying, the awareness, the facts, the engagement, we need to bring that to the forefront so you don't have these misconceptions of people saying, yeah, we're going to spend $13 million or we're going to spend $9 million, and why are we doing this and why are we doing that? And just kind of have to lay it all out so it's clear and concise. And there's no way that it could, be misconstrued. I don't know if that makes sense or.
Yes.
President Bartelli.
I'll defer to Trustee Sullivan first. I'd like to, we haven't heard.
Oh, sorry, Trustee Sullivan. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Oh, I didn't have my hand up.
That's right. Okay. Bartelli.
Okay. I agree with everything that's been said. I would like to give everyone agree or not on an action plan, and give direction to Director Weinstein. Director Weinstein, can you paraphrase what you've heard and what the next plan of action will be? We all agree on things. I'll criticize myself and some of the board at certain times. We talk about doing these things, we don't necessarily do them at the time we're talking about them. So do I hear from the board members, we're ready to move forward with what we've discussed, not a full-blown, and that you will, Director Weinstein, you'll begin to work on something and bring it to the board, possibly by the next meeting. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes,
Thank you.
Director Weinstein.
Yep. Yay.
All right. Anything else? Now we can move on to the next agenda items. Next agenda item is committee reports. Finance Committee, Treasurer Norton.
No update.
Next, Personnel Policy, Secretary Swistak.
Nothing right now. I was talking with the director about potentially scheduling a meeting at some point in the relatively near future, but we haven't really gotten further than maybe we should schedule one. So I'll report back when I know more.
Physical Plant, Vice President Bartelli.
Nothing at this time. I think we've covered quite a bit tonight regarding facilities.
Next item on the agenda, staff reports, director's report. Do you have anything additional to add from your director's report?
I do have some highlights because we did have public comment, and I won't go into the working budget because now we have something to input into the working budget. So we'll have something more complete at the next meeting. I'm going to move on to the more current topic, and regarding the numerous comments, we received many via email, in person, and during public comment, of course, during meetings. And as of 5 p.m. today, since the 7th of April, board members have received 33 emails regarding, I know we received more as of 5 o'clock, but 22 were in favor of the renovation and 11 were opposed, just so the public understands what we received recently. And there have been some very thoughtful comments, whether they were supportive or non-supportive of the renovation. Some did ask some questions and some did not have correct information. Obviously, we can't address all of them here right now, but I would like to address a couple of the public comments that did come via the in-person public comment at the last couple board meetings. The first one was that we had a complete renovation in 2007. We did have an interior renovation in 2007 where the restroom stalls were updated, furniture and carpeting were refreshed, and the shelving in the adult nonfiction collection was reorganized, and then we did install a new atrium window. However, no major renovations happened on the east side of the building and on the adult floor, nor any major renovations occurred on the entire second floor, and that would be services. So I just wanted, we did spend $1.7 million back in 2007, but it was not a complete renovation. So I just wanted to correct the record there. And sometimes we are juxtaposed to Naperville Public Library. And in comparison, the 95th Street Library was first built, brand new building in 2003. And the cost of that new building in 2003 was $15.8 million. 6 years later, they renovated. And then 8 years after that, in 2017, the Naperville Library renovated again. And that was for 3,000 square feet of space. And for 3,000 square feet of space, they spent approximately $3 million. And that $3 million expense, it didn't mirror what we did in 2007, but it was very similar, where they reorganized shelves, they painted, they carpeted. And again, our expense back in 2007 was 1.7. The other public comment statement said that the library uses index cards for patron registration and doesn't have a digital patron record. That's only partially true because yes, we do utilize index cards for patron registration, but we also have a digital database of patron accounts. And as you know, we budget for the Polaris database every year, and that also includes upgrades to the system. And we've had Polaris since the late 90s. So when a patron comes and registers for a card, the staff give them an index card, and the patron fills out the index card with the information. So then staff take that card and then input that information into the Polaris database. And we keep those cards in a vintage card catalog in the circulation department as a backup. That index card is also used for signature verification, and it also has a duplicate barcode attached to it, again, as a backup. So I just hope that clears up any concerns about the index card. And then the last public statement I'll comment on is that the library should not renovate because there are less people in the building and less card holders, and that because most people prefer online resources. And I actually had a conversation with a patron earlier today asking about social media posts about the renovation. And one of the things he emphasized was that he hopes that once the library renovates, because he did support a renovation, he actually wanted an expansion, but he did say that he hopes the board remembers that patrons still enjoy the physical book and not to reduce the collection. And that's actually why he wanted the expansion, so that the library could accommodate more collaborative space and community space, because that's where he saw libraries going, but that you would still keep the physical book collection. And I did assure him that the library recognizes that we have a large swath of traditional users as well as digital users, and that any renovation would accommodate both types of users. And then speaking to foot traffic in the building, poor service points and space constraints and accessibility issues are generally factors that reduce use. So many libraries renovate to address those deficiencies. And I just want to reiterate that the library has been discussing the facility enhancements since 2013, just to address the deficiencies in the building. And since the adoption of the 2019 strategic plan, we've had even more discussion on the facility. And for those who are here and who are watching online, a chronology and digital dashboard of those more recent discussions are available on the library's website under capital projects. And now we're going to be moving into another phase where we reach out and provide more community engagement. And then regarding the reduction of card holders, comment. So by way of patron request, the library modified LLD policy 300 to allow residents and household members to utilize one family card. And many families and households have one person who registers for a card because it's just more convenient for that family to do it that way. So the total number of cards doesn't necessarily equate to high or low library use. And use is more accurately assessed by a circulation statistic and or foot traffic. And I just want to speak to some statistics very briefly in just a minute, but for those of you who did not know, you can also house your library card barcode on a smartphone as well, and you just use a digital barcode app, and you can get more information there on the library's website, or call us or stop in about that too. And then just to wrap up, the last section of my report, I discussed statistics in general and how it's important on how you collect and interpret statistics to make sure we have a meaningful understanding of those numbers. So I showed some year-to-date comparisons in the report, and I also mentioned some other statistics that are not included on the general statistical report, because how many statistics do you want from me or does staff provide, and how long of a report do you want, which are meaningful, how long of a report, it's up to you. I'll gladly provide as many as you would like, but I think we want a more meaningful report, or maybe we need to look at that again. I just want to mention some new statistics and a couple of others you might not be as familiar with. We did initiate curbside pickup, and since initiation in May, 3,860 pickups happened with 19,441 materials in bags to patrons who use curbside, and it continues to be very much appreciated service. We added a new service during the pandemic when other agencies were closed, and that's the license plate renewal. We launched the service in January, and we've had 189 renewals in 3 months, and that's about 63 per month. And then as far as increases in statistics, we've had a 69% increase in holds placed. Of course, that's probably due to curbside pickup, as well as the remote card library registration online. Our notary service has had an increase of 172%. We don't count that in the statistical report, and I'm sure it's due to it have been an election year. But we did have 139 this year versus 51 last year. And then our home delivery service increased 14% since last year. Our YouTube views have increased 446%, again, due to staff-created programming. And then our app saw an increase in downloads as well as sessions. So I just wanted to share those with you so that there was a broader perspective on how we count, what we count, and how something like, say, the weather or an election year or a pandemic can affect statistics. And that concludes my report.
Any questions or comments on the director's report?
Mm-mm.
You're good? All right, next item is the assistant director's report. Is there anything to add?
I have nothing to add.
Any questions or comments on the assistant director's report?
No.
Okay. Next, no new business. Next item on the agenda is opportunity for trustee comments. Let's go trustee Duffy first.
Do you mind if I go
You want to go
a
last?
little late?
Okay, I'll let you go last.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, second to last. You're okay with that?
it's perfect. Trustee Larson.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Great meeting. I think, we've got a good game plan. We know where we're going. And hopefully, with the engagement thing that we can get for the communications plan for next month. I think that's really going to help. And I enjoyed reading all the emails that people sent in, positive and negative as well. So, and my phone kept blowing up all day. I was like, oh my, another one. That was good. It was really good.
All right, thank you. Treasurer Norton.
All right. I've been thinking so much since the last meeting, and I was writing down a lot of things, and I don't want to read it verbatim, but if I start to sound too eloquent, it is because I'm borrowing from my own notes. But I'll just start out by saying that I was so happy to receive all of the recent feedback that we've gotten since the last meeting, especially that it's really encouraging that we do have a very engaged and passionate library public. I was really, I love to read. I mean, that's sort of part and parcel to being, a proud member of the Lisle Library Board. And so I love reading what people have to say. And there were a lot of really candid thoughts that were shared and lengthy, a number of them, and I read them word for word. So to anyone who's continuing to listen, who heard my calls for feedback, I want to assure you that I read everything you said, and I appreciate everything you said tremendously. And I want to continue to encourage that. It's what I've said many times over the past 2 years, and I do and have said that we need to keep this two-way communication flowing as much as we can, and I think we emphasized that tonight as a group with our unanimous support for this comprehensive communication plan that's about to get underway. And based on the feedback collected and our work as a team thus far, I do feel that this district as a whole will benefit the most from a project, which we absolutely should move forward with now, that catches up all the necessary maintenance and invests in facility improvements in the areas that were identified from community engagement and strategic planning as most impactful, such as the right-sized youth section, space optimization, restrooms, accessibility options, enhancements reflecting 21st century library usage, all things that I'm seeing in the concept that we have, through that iterative process, been getting to. So I'm glad that we're heading in the direction of hitting upon all of those points while at the same time bringing the projected costs down. Making sure though that it is in balances with what is fiscally attainable without putting pressure on the library district's finances and then pressure on the library board for years to come. So I believe our focus should be making sure we get that right intersection of prioritizing these improvements we all agree we need, and making sure that our approach to scope and design helps us stretch our budget as far as it can go to maximize project value without paramount, being without putting our finances into an aggressive position. To that end, I want to challenge us to consider, or at least continue to, as we talk through this, consider a phased approach like I tried to ask about in past meetings. I want us to carefully consider what things could still be carved out without affecting the more necessary items of the project, since our budget is tighter than we had originally predicted. Maybe we would be getting to this kind of creative thinking at a later stage in the process. I just want to make sure that whatever we decide, we have been the best stewards of the community's funds, and I want these funds to achieve as many of our wants and needs as possible as a group, to make sure that we don't just invest the right amount of money. We're getting to this number, and it's not just the right amount of money, but that we're putting that money into the right places and at the right time so that we're maximizing value. And that's the nuance that I'm trying to promote, because I don't think we as a board are far apart in our thinking, but since I'm one of the people who come from a financial background, I want to do my part to help us navigate the nuances of these budget considerations. Though I'm very supportive of this renovation project and many of its specific elements, I seem to come out maybe closer to an outlier in certain ways, tugging in a certain direction. And I would like to challenge us as a whole to see if we could bring this project strategy to a scope and timeline that requires less or no debt, or otherwise prove to ourselves that we have the ability to accomplish this concept at this budget level with a less aggressive cash flow projection. Because I think we can see it is requiring those CPI increases, and it is testing our reserve balances to a low threshold that may or may not be adequate. So I'm glad, we've seen hard work by CCS and the director and the architect to get us from that much higher level down to this lower budget amount. I'm just still cautious about the debt level in both of these 1A and 1B options that we still see. And they seem to push our limits. So overall, as we continue this iterative process, if we do it right, I think we have the potential to satisfy virtually all of our stakeholders if we're strategic in refining our project priorities and pay careful attention to seeking out financial upsides, to phasing, carving certain things out to save money, minimizing the financing. I think we can ensure that we do everything right to make this a smart project that achieves the goals and also doesn't saddle the future board with tough decisions about the finances over the next 20 years. So that's what I'm hopeful for. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Sullivan.
I'm going to follow that up. I think tonight is a great meeting. I think Tatiana has a big to do with a lot of expectations, and I'm real eager to pitch in and to help wherever it's needed. So Tatiana, you just let us know, or let me know, because I'm offering, whatever I can do to help. So thank you guys for a great meeting.
All righty. Secretary Swiftstack.
Okay, so I have a few things unrelated to what we talked about tonight at the meeting. So one of the things that I wanted to point out is when I came in to review bills on Friday, and I was looking through them, I noticed that we had an increase in purchases in both nonfiction books for youth services and books that are in other languages. And I was really excited to see that. And I was in the library earlier today picking up my packet, and I checked out some more nonfiction children's books for my third grader, and he looked at them right away when I got home with them. So I'm really excited to see more of those nonfiction books at the younger level. So I was excited to see that. Another youth services thing I wanted to share about was I don't know, like a week or so ago, I was in youth services with my 3 kids. My 14-year-old was looking for a specific book that he had checked out before, but couldn't remember the title of it. All he could remember was that the cover was blue. And he remembered part of the general idea of the book. And so I told him, I said, okay, I said, well, you could go over to Miss Katie and ask her to help you. And he said, oh, no. I did everything that you're supposed to do. I was Googling it. I was looking it up. I put all these different search fields in to try to find the book, and I can't find it. And I said, well, I'm sure Miss Katie has some special librarian skills that she can help you find it. And he's like, no, I did everything. I said, just go ask her. So he walked over and he talked to Miss Katie and he told her, it's a blue book. It's about this topic. And within like a minute, she's like, is it? She like typed on the computer and then she said, is it blah, blah, blah? And he's like, yes, that's it. And then she was able to tell him where it was, and he found it and pulled it off the shelf and checked it out. And so it was just a really neat experience, to say like, look at, they really do have these magic abilities, the staff, and we're really lucky to have such a great staff. So I kind of wanted to share that as well, because that was an exciting thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I really appreciated all the community feedback we've been getting over the last few days. The positive and the negative. It's really great to hear from various stakeholders in the community, and I really appreciate that. And I hope that we continue to hear from members of the community. And I look forward to this communications plan that we're doing to make sure that we get out the correct and factual information to all the stakeholders so that they know what we're planning, where we're coming from, and all of that. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, I know that this is Trustee Duffy's last meeting with us, and I wanted to thank him for his service on the board. And I'm not sure if President Hummel is going to be at our May meeting or not, so I don't know if this is his last meeting or not, but I wanted to thank him for his many years of service on the board as well. And I really appreciate having served with both of you on the board, and I wish you both luck in your future endeavors on your new boards.
Thank you, Vice President Bartelli.
Well, I would like to thank staff and Mark, CCS, and also Sheehan. I think it was a good meeting tonight. Also, I found the walk around the building outside and the inside helpful with Director Weinstein. I'm pretty much a visual person, and it really helped me figure out where all of the improvements will be. I'm also looking forward to our communication plan and working on that. I'd like to thank the department heads for their quarterly reports. I enjoy reading those. They're very informative. I especially wanted to mention the technical services report. The fact that we added a new book vendor called Ingram. That allows us to get the popular titles quickly and receive titles before release dates. I love the New York Times bestseller list. And the minute I see the books on that list, I want those books. And I know this is going to help in that effort. So that's a great ad. I also enjoy getting the feedback. Keep it coming, pro and con. And I also wanted to mention the library events, the offerings. Interesting, the programs from the Arts to Page, and also things to do in Chicago. Those are fairly new, I think. And it's pretty cool to see that we are offering those things. So, and then again, like to say thank you to Trustee Duffy for his service. It's been interesting working with you and getting to know you better. And again, with Tom Hummel. Not sure, Tom, I think you're going to try to hang on to the bitter end, but and I appreciate that.
Wait a minute, spoiler.
But anyway, thank you also if this happens to be your last meeting. So Thank you. That's it.
I'll actually go next, and then I'll let Trustee Duffy finish it up since we've had a couple of spoilers here already. But actually, one is actually still board business. So we did get a lot of emails, as the directors mentioned. I know we in the beginning of the meeting, and she also provided a summary to us late this afternoon. Does the board want those emails at least summarized for public? I see this one, no, shaking head, no. Secretary Swistak.
Well, I think it's okay. I think it's okay to summarize them, but they weren't submitted via, for public comment. So we can't say exactly what they said, but I think we can summarize some of the messages. I think that's okay, but not anything, identifiable just because they did not submit it for public comment.
Gotcha. Is that the consensus for the board? What Trustee Swistak said, thumbs up. With Trustee Swistak, thumbs down. If you want one thumbs up, or just what do you want to?
Question for you. Question.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes, a few of them did have errors in them.
Pardon?
A few of them have misstatements. So I guess, how do you, I don't want to perpetuate misstatements. So in summarizing them, how do you handle that?
But director, you'll be whoever the board president is and the director kind of go through the minutes. So I guess I didn't ask your opinion on that. What do you think?
Are you talking about?
As far as the email, all the
email?
emails we've gotten in the last week or so in regards to this, should they be included for at least summarized in public comment?
In the minutes.
In the minutes, correct, yes.
Well, staff can do that as we do with regular public comment.
Okay, so it'll be summarized is the upshot of it.
Yeah, but
Vice President Bartelli.
well, I'm kind of agreeing with Trustee Sullivan. I don't know how would we summarize misinformation?
I wouldn't want to adjust anyone's public comment.
Right.
If there was something that was flagrantly incorrect, we could footnote it. I can't recall all of them because there was like 33
at least,
or
yeah,
more.
yeah.
So if there was something that is summarized and that's all they said was a completely wrong statement, we could asterisk it and.
I mean, you could summarize like opposed, in favor of, you're not gonna have to go into the details for that, but it's a summary, so.
Well, I'll do whatever.
Okay, I get you.
want me to do.
The problem I have is that when somebody says something, then they take and write a whole paragraph that's based upon inaccuracy that, I'm against it. And then they write, okay, you're spending X amount of money. Or, like one of them said, oh, you're going to borrow and you're not going to use your reserves. Okay, right there, I wanted to shoot myself. Okay. And then they went on to say why that's a bad idea not to spend your own reserves. Well, so the whole gist of it is based on an inaccuracy. So how do you even write that one is valid and how do you leave it uncorrected?
Why don't we do this maybe to keep, why don't we just have it like summary, like there was, for example, like 22 emails in favor and they said in general this. There was 11 opposed and in general they said this. I mean, just to keep it vague, at least have some public documentation. This doesn't have to get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, very, very, very.
Yeah, very general.
I guess, I don't know if I like the wording opposed. It wasn't like they were doing an upward. Most of their comments were constructive or, critical, you know what I mean? It was more along the lines of positive, negative, not for.
I agree. And there was some in the middle that were like to spend up to your reserves. So, I I'm going to trust the director and then whoever has to review the minutes for the May meeting, that it would be taken care of. But I guess the upshot of it is, are we okay? You're not okay, so I see one shaking head, so
Yeah, I don't.
they just don't include it. I mean, they're always foiable too. I mean, in worst case scenario, but I'd rather just drop it. I think it'd be
I think everyone that has an inaccuracy, however,
you want to
should
just,
receive an email in return saying, I just want to let you know that this is what we're going to do. And I think that inaccuracy should be corrected because that person is going to spread that inaccuracy to several other people.
how about, because I don't want to get, so how about we don't include it? I'll actually withdraw this whole idea, and then, and actually, if anything else, maybe the director also could go through those again, and I don't know if I want to, I mean, we could decide if she should individually respond, or I could.
I wasn't on a lot of them.
Okay, that's fine. Either I could individually respond, or we could actually use it as a basis to figure out how to use it as a communication plan, like what we know we got to work on as far as information. Maybe that's a better solution.
I mean, I'd be happy to work with the board president on answering
That's
some
fine.
of the.
We'll just do that. We'll just, so they weren't really meant for public comment, so we'll just exclude them. And like I said, if somebody can always FOIA them. I didn't think that would be, so we'll just do it that way. Everybody doesn't
And
mind.
it would be nice if you and Tatiana answered.
We will. All right, and then the other thing is, okay, so that one's taken care of. And then the other, actually, I was going to kind of say this in the when we were discussing this, but the one general comment I would make though too, as far as the whole project and even the last few years is, I think this board, especially over the last 4 years, 2 to 4 years, has proved that we can't cut taxes. We did not cut services. If anything, we've even added improved services. And now we're able to even do a capital project. And, a lot of times when people say they're going to cut taxes, it's always doom and gloom, like, oh my God, they're going to have to cut services, this, that, and the other thing. You're going to have to lay off the police. You're going to have to lay off the fire. But what we prove as this, and I think everybody, whether it's staff or board members, current and former board members, should be proud of, is we show that we could reduce the tax levy and still maintain services, if not even improve and add services, and do a capital project. And the only tax increases we're doing in the future are increasing by CPI. And even if we didn't do a library project, the way, like I said earlier, the way the library is funded, it's basically all property taxes. And even I've said, in the beginning, 4 years ago, or even going back 8+ years, yes, once you cut the taxes, get it down to where it really should be. And we did that, wisely over 3 to 4 years. And inevitably, the way the library is funded, it's going to have to go up because expense, even if you control and maintain your expenses as good as possible, or as well as possible, it's going to eventually go up just with inflation and cost of living, etc. So that CPI, or taking the tax increases again at some point, was going to happen inevitably, project or no project.
True.
So I think, again, that would be that's the one thing I think is a big takeaway here. But I think it should be an example for a lot of other units of government. And then as far as some of the other comments, this may be my last meeting. I have a little bit more of a runway than Trustee Duffy is, because I think his first, I don't want to be too much of a spoiler here, but I think his first meeting is May 3rd. Mine would be mid-May. Actually, it would be the day after the library's May meeting. So I'm going to play it by ear. So as of now, I'm still on the board, but I may not be here in May. So I'll keep everybody informed on that. If anything, I'll come back in public comment and say goodbye. With that, for the grand finale, even though I think we all spoiled Trustee Duffy.
Yeah, so this is my last meeting, because May 3rd is my first meeting in the village. So I'm going to take a liberty. I'm going to go past 5 minutes, but here, I don't have to ask for an extension, so I'll take that. Yeah. So, I want to say one thing about the renovation as I kind of roll off here. I know this is probably one of the biggest things a library does as a board, right? And often there's a lot of that goes into it. And I will say this much, that as a board, you guys continue to look at every angle, that you have vetted every option. And, I view this as an opportunity to invest in the community. We have to continue to invest, because if you do not, services do wither on the vine. I think that was something we saw in one of the emails, which I really liked. So I really just want to encourage you guys, and I agree with all the comments we've said about this, but I think it's very much needed. So I did write something nice about each one of you, even you, Trustee Sullivan.
No.
Yeah, and I'm going to go informal here. So for Karen, I have always loved your pointed questions and comments. They always just somehow steer me in the right direction. I don't think you ever knew that, but I really appreciated it. Marjorie, your dedication and thoughtfulness I just always love it at these meetings. And your purple room just fascinates me.
It's an
Jenny,
open invitation, Tom. Open invitation.
Perfect. Jenny, I think you and I always hit it off because we're both process-oriented people. And, I think that very rare trait that I'm usually called a robot when I say stuff like that. Emily, who's just went out of their webcam again, always my partner in crime. I know we're always looking out for the youth here. And you really worked me hard on that policy personnel committee. I am not going to miss those meetings. Tom, I think you and I probably thought, man, we're going to probably disagree all the time at every single meeting. And yet we always find ourselves agreeing with each other. And I will say you have led this board in a great way. And I very much have appreciated how organized we are and how we kind of cut through some of the stuff and just get to the point. And Liz. I love your out-of-box thinking. And it is very evident to me that you clearly love this library. And that is something that I very much appreciate about it. Finally, the staff. You guys have a hard job. I'm so happy that I work in the private sector because you often have to manage up. You have to manage up a board. You have to teach us about your profession when we don't know. But the work, the dedication that you guys put into the community, that's unparamount. You don't know the impact that you day to day. And I think that is probably one of the cool things about the library staff. So, I thank everyone for the last couple of years. I will never forget that. And when I at those village meetings for 5.5 hours, I will love to miss these 3-hour meetings that week.
We warmed you up with the 3 hours.
You did. My endurance is here now.
Yeah.
But please know, you always have a supporter of the library and me. I'm always here. And I will definitely be watching, reading the agendas, but only when I have my free time. So, but I thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'll make sure the board, I noticed in the the cost projections, there's a $60,000 line item for village permits. We know who to talk to get those waived.
We'll happily have a conversation. How about that?
No, okay. Maybe we'll just take 30 off. We'll split the difference. But, well, thank you very much. Congratulations. I wish you the best of luck on the village. I think you'll be a good asset there. And I think there's actually some exciting times here. There's been some, there's been a contentiousness there for a while, but there is actually been, I'll take a more optimistic view. There's actually been some good work done that a lot of people actually, Mark Rogers is here, has been part of it with planning and zoning, like with the zoning code rewrite and all that. So, I mean, there's some groundwork laid to get the village going in the right direction, and hopefully you can help facilitate that. Any other trustees want to comment? And okay, we're good.
Go get them, Tom and Duffy and Tom Hummel. Make us proud.
Yeah, with that being said, I don't know, Trustee Duffy, you want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second. This is Sullivan.
Being Sullivan, any comments? If not, roll call, please.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, we are adjourned at 10:01. Thank you very much, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.